Beneath the dust of forgotten empires and the buried foundations of the world's first great cities lies a chapter of human history wrapped in silence. The Bronze Age, an era of innovation, mystery, and sudden collapse. Long before iron-forged kingdoms, this ancient world thrived with monumental architecture, advanced metallurgy, complex trade networks, and astonishing astronomical knowledge. Yet scattered across deserts, mountains, and coastlines, from the crumbling citadels of Anatolia to the sacred sites of Palestine, echo unanswered questions that challenge everything we think we know. What force caused entire civilizations to vanish almost overnight? How did distant cultures share technology with impossible speed? Who built the megalithic structures whose purpose and precision still defy explanation? Here, myth meets archaeology, and science walks the thin line between truth and legend. These are not fairy tales. They are fragments of a forgotten world, waiting to be deciphered. So sit back, relax, and let's journey into the unsolved mysteries of the Bronze Age, where every stone, every artifact, and every ruin whispers a secret yet to be revealed. Along quiet coastlines where once thundering fleets ruled the horizon, the remains of ancient ports lie still beneath sun-bleached stone. The air is warm, the sea calm, yet the silence feels unnatural, as though something vital once echoed here and then abruptly faded away. These peaceful waters, from the Greek islands to the shores of Palestine and Egypt, once carried kings, merchants, warriors, and envoys across a thriving web of diplomacy and trade. The late Bronze Age world, around 1200 BC, stood right here, sophisticated, connected, confident. And then, almost without warning, it collapsed. For centuries, this era represented a pinnacle of early civilization. Hittite scribes recorded royal treaties on clay tablets in massive palatial archives. Egyptian pharaohs commanded armies and celebrated victories carved into monumental stone. Palace complexes in Mycenae gleamed with gold and bronze, linked by trade routes stretching across seas and continents. In Canaan, fortified towns watched caravans and ships bring exotic goods: copper, tin, olive oil, wine, each link in a vast and delicate network. This was not a world on the brink of ruin. It was a world thriving in the sunlight of power and ambition. Then, one by one, the lights went out. Around 1200 BC, cities burned across the eastern Mediterranean. Palaces that had stood for centuries crumbled into ash. Great kingdoms, Hatti, Mycenae, the new kingdom's hold on its territories, wavered and fell. Only Egypt endured, and even it emerged scarred and diminished. Trade routes dissolved. Writing systems disappeared. Cultural memory fractured. To many archaeologists, this moment marks the closest thing the ancient world came to a true apocalypse. How could a civilization so vast, interconnected, and advanced disintegrate so quickly? Mainstream theories point to a combination of pressures, each one weakening the foundations until collapse became inevitable. Prolonged droughts may have withered crops, strained resources, and fueled famine. Earthquakes rocked the Aegean and Anatolia in repeated waves, toppling fortifications and sowing chaos. Internal rebellions challenged local elites. And on the edges of this fracturing world, new migration movements surged. Among them were the enigmatic Sea Peoples, remembered in Egyptian inscriptions as a confederation of seafaring invaders. Their identity remains uncertain. Refugees fleeing famine, opportunistic warriors, former subjects of collapsing kingdoms. Whatever their origin, they appear as both a symptom and a cause of the upheaval. Raiders, settlers, or survivors of a dying global system. And yet, for all these explanations, something still feels unresolved. Civilizations have endured droughts, earthquakes, and invasions before. Why did so many fall at once, across such a wide region, leaving only fragments behind? Some researchers suggest climate change triggered cascading social and political crisis. Others point to shifts in warfare, new weapons, new tactics that eroded the power of entrenched elites. Some highlight the fragility of early globalization. A single failing trade route could ripple across kingdoms dependent on bronze, on diplomacy, on cooperation. Still, questions remain. Why do we find sudden abandonment in places where life had been stable for centuries? What caused once secure kingdoms to lose control so quickly? How did writing and literacy vanish so thoroughly, only to re-emerge generations later in entirely new forms? Beyond academic debate, more speculative ideas linger on the edges of this mystery. Did a previously unknown pandemic sweep across the ancient world, its traces lost in time? Could volcanic activity or atmospheric change, perhaps triggered by distant eruptions, have disrupted weather patterns more severely than we realize? Others wonder whether shifts in celestial events, cometary debris, or even ancient cultural trauma passed through myth, not memory, shaped this turning point. In more imaginative circles, whispers of forgotten technologies, lost migrations, or external contact surface, not as claims, but as questions. Could something outside human control have nudged history off its familiar course? Could memory of this collapse survive in legends of floods, fire from the sky, or wandering peoples searching for new lands? We may never know for certain. What we do know is that when the dust finally settled, a new world emerged. The Iron Age dawned. Phoenician sailors charted new horizons. Small kingdoms rose from the ashes of fallen empires. Writing returned in new scripts. Trade revived, though along different paths. And humanity continued, reshaped by loss and rebirth. Yet walking among these ruins today, quiet citadels, collapsed walls, broken pottery scattered beneath olive trees, it is difficult not to feel the weight of what once was. A world so advanced, so interconnected, undone not by a single cataclysm, but by a storm of forces converging in a moment no one could stop. What truly happened here? Was it merely coincidence, or a pattern we still do not understand? In the cracks of ancient stone and the silent halls of abandoned palaces, the answer waits. Lost, perhaps, but not forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, still waiting to be found. And as the Bronze Age world flickered and dimmed, its palaces crumbling and its trade routes falling silent, another shadow rose across the horizon, one not forged from drought or earthquake, but carried by sail and oar across restless seas. Picture a quiet shoreline in the eastern Mediterranean. Soft waves roll against ancient stones now scattered and half buried in sand. Far across the water, the faint outline of distant mountains blurs into the morning haze. It is peaceful here today, almost too peaceful. For more than 3,000 years ago, these coasts trembled beneath the arrival of a mysterious force. A confederation of peoples whose names were carved in desperate tones on temple walls, remembered not as traitors or diplomats, but as destroyers. The Egyptians called them the Sea Peoples, a collection of tribes, warriors, migrants, or something else altogether. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did their appearance coincide with the unraveling of an entire age? Historical records offer fragments, but never clarity. A temple inscription in Egypt depicts fierce naval battles, massive ships locked in combat, archers firing from deck to deck, and Egyptians fighting for their very survival. In another scene, women and children appear among the invaders, a sign not merely of soldiers, but of whole societies on the move. Farther north, ruins in Anatolia and the Aegean speak of violent destruction. Cities burned to ash, walls toppled, and treasures buried hurriedly, never reclaimed. The world these peoples entered was already strained. Empires like the Hittites faltered, Mycenaean palaces fell silent, and towns in Canaan and along the coast of Palestine saw upheaval. Some scholars argue that the Sea Peoples did not cause the collapse. They emerged from it, displaced by famine or war, seeking refuge and new lands as the old order crumbled. Could they have been survivors, not conquerors? Refugees caught in a storm far greater than themselves? Others see them differently, as opportunistic raiders striking weakened kingdoms, their loose alliances shifting like the tide. Their weaponry, their ships, their tactics. Some elements seem new, unfamiliar, disruptive. Were they pioneers of a changing age, the embodiment of a world transforming through force? Intriguingly, their origins remain unsolved. Theories point in many directions. The islands of the Aegean, the coasts of Sicily or Cyprus, the plains of Anatolia, even beyond the familiar boundaries of the Mediterranean world. Some historians propose natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, crop failures, sent waves of displaced peoples eastward in desperate search of stability. Others consider political collapse or internal revolt, where once loyal subjects turned to the sea in hope or rebellion. Then there are the quieter clues, linguistic hints tied to distant lands, pottery styles that appear suddenly in regions hundreds of miles apart, and burial practices that suggest cultural blending rather than simple invasion. Could the Sea Peoples have been a coalition of diverse groups, bound not by origin, but by circumstance? A wandering union of the displaced, the ambitious, the desperate. The deeper one looks, the more elusive they become. And in the borderlands of speculation, stranger possibilities emerge. Were they part of a forgotten empire never fully recorded in surviving texts? Did shifting climate patterns or cosmic events send waves of migration rippling across continents? Some have wondered whether ancient legends, from lost islands to drowned homelands, preserve echoes of their story, myth, and memory intertwined across generations. Others ask whether these groups carried unknown knowledge or traditions that vanished with their movement, fragments of cultures erased before history could preserve them. What is fact? What is interpretation? And what remains beyond our reach? Even their legacy raises questions. Though many regions suffered devastation, new societies soon emerged. Phoenician traders along the coast, early Iron Age settlements across the Levant, and shifting power dynamics reshaping the Mediterranean world. Did these newcomers build upon the ruins left behind by the Sea Peoples? Or were some of them descendants of the very migrants once feared and condemned? Today, as the sea laps gently against ancient harbors and wind drifts across forgotten foundations, the mystery endures. Stones hold silence. Inscriptions speak only in fragments. And the ships that once carried those restless travelers across the waves have long since dissolved into memory. Who were the Sea Peoples? Raiders, refugees, revolutionaries, or something entirely different? The answers remain scattered like broken pottery along forgotten shores. And somewhere, buried beneath sand and time, perhaps a final clue still waits, undiscovered, unrecognized, ready to reshape our understanding of a vanished world. For now, the sea keeps its secrets, and we are left to wonder. And as mysterious fleets faded back into the horizon, leaving smoldering ports and shifting kingdoms in their wake, another question rises quietly from the ruins of the Bronze Age, less dramatic than war, yet perhaps even more perplexing. A question not of people, but of metal, of trade, of a resource so vital that without it, the entire foundation of Bronze Age civilization could not exist. Tin. Picture a storage room deep within an ancient palace. Stone walls, cool air, and clay jars sealed with faded markings. Inside them sits a dull, silvery metal. Tin ingots, neatly stacked beside lumps of reddish copper. It seems humble, almost ordinary. But when the two metals meet, they create bronze, stronger, sharper, more durable than anything the world had known before. With bronze came chariots, plows, weapons, and tools, the rise of cities, the spread of trade, the birth of empires. And yet, for all its importance, the source of the Bronze Age's tin remains one of history's great enigmas. Copper was abundant, mined across the ancient Near East, from Cyprus to the Sinai. But tin? Tin was rare. So rare that we still cannot fully trace where Bronze Age civilizations acquired enough of it to fuel centuries of prosperity and warfare. Records are fragmentary. Archaeological evidence is scattered. The puzzle deepens the more we examine it. What we do know is this: the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Anatolia, and the coastal towns of Canaan and Palestine depended on long-distance networks to secure this essential metal. Without tin, there was no bronze. Without bronze, the age itself could not exist. But the nearest confirmed tin mines, those in Central Asia and perhaps in Anatolia, lay hundreds, if not thousands, of miles from the heart of the Bronze Age world. Tin from Cornwall in Britain and other possible sources across Europe adds to the mystery. How could such distant lands be linked in trade networks long before advanced navigation, standardized maps, or written shipping records? Imagine caravans moving across deserts, ships hugging unfamiliar coasts, traders carrying unmarked ingots across mountains and river valleys. Who coordinated this system? How did it remain stable? And why, at times, does it seem to vanish from the historical record? Some historians argue that tin sources were simply small, scattered, and quickly depleted. Others suggest that ancient trade networks were far more sophisticated than we once believed, capable not only of moving metal, but of maintaining protected commercial routes across continents. Perhaps merchant families or secretive guilds controlled the flow, keeping knowledge guarded, their influence hidden behind the thrones of kings. Then there are theories that stretch the imagination further. Were there tin mines still undiscovered, buried beneath forests or seas, erased by time or catastrophe? Could Bronze Age mariners have reached distant shores, beyond the Mediterranean, beyond the Black Sea, long before such journeys are commonly acknowledged? Did forgotten cultures, now lost to memory and archaeology alike, once play a crucial role in feeding the furnaces of ancient empires? Inscriptions speak occasionally of foreign traders, mysterious lands to the north and west, and long journeys by sea. But they never reveal enough. They offer hints, not answers. And what of the collapse? When the Bronze Age world faltered around 1200 BC, tin supplies appear to shift abruptly. Black markets, closed routes, new powers rising in obscurity? Or did the disappearance of tin trigger the collapse itself, cutting off kingdoms from the metal they needed to sustain their armies, their tools, their economies? The timing is tantalizing, too close to ignore. Some scholars propose that as tin sources dwindled or supply lines fractured, societies that relied on bronze became vulnerable, economically, militarily, socially. Iron, harder to produce but more abundant, soon emerged as the new foundation of power. Was this a natural technological evolution, or a desperate response to a vanished resource? Even today, geologists and archaeologists debate ancient tin deposits, tracing isotopic signatures through laboratories and excavation sites. They follow faint trails across continents, piecing together a trade map that refuses to fully reveal itself. Each discovery answers one question only to raise several more. Standing in the ruins of a Bronze Age warehouse or holding an ingot recovered from the seabed, one cannot help but feel the weight of what is unknown. The silence around this single, unremarkable metal whispers of a story far larger than chemistry and ore. A story of hidden networks, vanished roots, and perhaps entire societies whose names we no longer speak. Where did all the tin come from? Who controlled its movement? And what happened when that lifeline finally broke? The Bronze Age leaves us clues, but never certainty. And somewhere, beneath a collapsed mine, within a forgotten archive, or resting on the ocean floor, perhaps the missing link still waits, untouched by time, ready to illuminate a chapter of history we have only begun to understand. And if the Bronze Age depended on secrets hidden in trade routes and the quiet shimmer of tin, it also looked upward, toward the sky. For across the ancient world, leaders, priests, and travelers watched the heavens not as distant stars, but as guides, calendars, and divine messages. And sometimes, pieces of that celestial knowledge found their way into objects that have survived long enough to challenge everything we think we know about the past. High in the gentle hills of Central Europe, where forests roll across the landscape and mist gathers above dark pines at dawn, a small clearing holds a secret that rewrote history. Here, near the town of Nebra in Germany, treasure hunters uncovered something unexpected in 1999, a circular bronze disc, its surface dark with age, decorated with gold shapes, circles, crescents, and clusters shining like captured starlight. The Nebra Sky Disc. At first glance, it seems simple, rough, primitive even. But look closer. The gold inlays form a crescent moon, a round sun, or is it another moon? A cluster of 7 stars many believe to be the Pleiades. 2 curved golden arcs once framed the edges, aligned with the movements of the sun across the horizon. Another arc at the bottom may represent a solar boat, a symbol known in cultures far from Central Europe, from the Mediterranean to ancient Egypt. This is not merely art, it is knowledge, pressed into metal nearly 3,600 years ago. Historians and archaeologists date the disc to roughly 1600 BC, making it one of the oldest known representations of the cosmos. Its discovery forced scholars to reassess what they believed about Bronze Age Europe. This region, long imagined as home to simple farmers and warriors, now revealed evidence of advanced astronomical observation, ritual practice, and symbolic sophistication. But its mysteries go deeper. How did a culture without writing create an object that aligns with complex solar and lunar cycles? Were its makers part of a widespread network of knowledge and trade? Already the disc raises questions about connections between distant peoples. The gold traces back to Cornwall, the bronze to other European sources, and yet the design echoes ideas found across the ancient world. Coincidence? Shared inspiration? Or evidence of long-distance cultural exchange far more intricate than once assumed? The disc's purpose remains debated. Was it a ritual object used by priests to align festivals and harvests with celestial movements? A teaching tool for astronomers? A sacred artifact linking earthly rulers to the heavens? Or something else, its meaning lost in time? Its life story adds another layer of intrigue. It was first used, then altered. Gold arcs added, removed, repositioned. A symbol of growing knowledge? Or perhaps shifting beliefs as the night sky continued to guide and challenge those who studied it. And then, suddenly it was buried, carefully, deliberately, alongside swords, axes, and bracelets, objects of power and prestige. Was it an offering, a ritual retirement, or an attempt to hide knowledge from falling into the wrong hands during turbulent times? We do not know. Some scholars suggest a local chiefdom that fused astronomy with religion. Others see evidence of traveling knowledge bearers, specialists moving between lands, carrying secrets of the heavens. And on the speculative edges, theories ripple outward. Could this disc point to an ancient tradition of sky-watching schools, long lost? Did Bronze Age Europe possess a scientific worldview history has overlooked? Or could the disc represent echoes of an even older system of knowledge, carried forward from forgotten civilizations? There are no definitive answers. Standing before the Nebra Sky Disc today, encased in museum glass, it almost hums with quiet power. Its symbols are at once familiar and unknowable, scientific and mystical. A Bronze Age mind, without telescopes, without written formulas, looked at the sky and saw patterns, cycles, meaning, and then turned that vision into metal that still speaks to us across millennia. We hold it in our hands, but do we truly understand it? Was this disc a singular marvel, a lone genius's creation, or a surviving fragment of a broader astronomical tradition, now buried under centuries of soil and forgotten memory? As twilight settles over the fields where it once lay hidden, the stars it depicts appear overhead, unchanged, eternal, still traveling their ancient routes across the night. The same sky watched by kings, farmers, priests, and wanderers of the Bronze Age. We can trace its light, but the hands that captured it on bronze remain silent, and somewhere, perhaps in a forest clearing or beneath an unmarked hill, another artifact waits, another piece of a celestial puzzle we are only just beginning to see. And as the Bronze Age sky was charted on discs of bronze, and knowledge of trade and metal flowed across continents, some mysteries of the era remain firmly grounded, etched in stone rather than carried on the wind. One of the most enigmatic of these is the Saint-Bélec Slab, a massive weathered stone carved with patterns so precise, so deliberate, that it challenges our understanding of Bronze Age societies. Imagine a clearing in the rolling hills of western France. The air is damp with morning mist, and the ground underfoot is soft with moss. There, partially buried and overlooked for centuries, lies a slab of gray stone, nearly 3 meters long, heavy, imposing. Its surface is adorned with geometric patterns, rectangles, lines, and dots arranged in a careful, deliberate composition. To the untrained eye, it might seem like abstract decoration. But to those who study it, the stone tells a different story. Recent analysis suggests that the Saint-Bélec Slab is far more than mere ornamentation. Its carvings correspond to the topography of the surrounding landscape, mapping rivers, valleys, and settlements in a way that could only have been achieved by careful observation and planning. Dating indicates it was created during the early Bronze Age, around 1900 to 1650 BC, making it one of the oldest known cartographic representations in the world. A map, etched in stone, thousands of years before writing systems became widespread in the region. Yet the questions it raises are profound. Who created it? What motivated them to invest so much time and skill into recording the contours of their territory? Was it a tool for administration, a record of boundaries, or perhaps a sacred object linking the land to the spiritual or political power of its rulers? The scale and precision suggest a society capable of complex organization, yet so little is known about the people behind it. Some scholars propose that the slab was intended for local elites, a way to assert control over land and resources. Others speculate it was a ceremonial artifact, a symbolic representation of dominion over territory that was as much spiritual as it was practical. And then there are more speculative interpretations. Could it have been a guide for travelers, a record of sacred or ritual sites, or even a teaching tool for mapping and orientation? Each possibility opens a window into a Bronze Age world that remains frustratingly opaque. The Saint-Bélec Slab also raises questions about connections across Europe. Similar abstract symbols appear in artifacts from distant regions. Were these coincidental, or did a shared symbolic language circulate among early European communities? Could knowledge of landscape representation have traveled along the same trade networks that carried tin, bronze, and other essential materials? If so, The slab may represent a node in a broader network of knowledge, one that has largely disappeared from the archaeological record. Its discovery and preservation tell a story in themselves. The slab was found reused in a burial cairn, its original purpose obscured by centuries of shifting soil and memory. What other artifacts remain hidden beneath fields, forests, and riverbanks, waiting to reveal further pieces of this puzzle? How much of the Bronze Age landscape, both physical and cognitive, is lost to time? Standing before the Saint-Bélec Slab today, it is impossible not to feel a quiet awe. Here is a people, long vanished, reaching across millennia through stone. They observed, recorded, and expressed knowledge of their world with a precision that rivals modern efforts to map the landscape, and yet, their intentions, their methods, and their culture remain largely invisible, known only through these faint traces. Was it a map, a monument, a ceremonial object, or something else entirely that we have not yet imagined? Could it be that our understanding of Bronze Age Europe is still just the surface, and beneath it lies a deeper network of knowledge, ritual, and social organization? The Saint-Bélec Slab rests in silence, waiting. Its etched lines follow rivers that still flow, valleys that still divide the land, and settlements long vanished. We can read the patterns, trace the shapes, and marvel at the skill involved, but the human story behind them remains an open question. Somewhere in the quiet hills, between what survives and what is lost, perhaps more fragments of this ancient knowledge await discovery, ready to reshape the way we see the Bronze Age world. And as the landscapes of Bronze Age Europe were observed and recorded, and sacred knowledge was pressed into metal and stone, another enigma rests quietly beneath the soil, hidden treasures that appear suddenly, like whispers from the past. These are the Bronze Age hoards, carefully collected deposits of metal objects, sometimes buried in the earth, other times hidden in rivers or marshes, waiting for a hand that never returned. Imagine a low-lying field in Central Europe, where mist clings to the grass at dawn. A plow strikes something solid beneath the surface. The soil is upturned, revealing a glint of bronze. Slowly, the outlines of axes, swords, ornaments, and ingots emerge. Arranged with deliberate care, each piece placed in a pattern that seems purposeful yet enigmatic. Such discoveries are not rare. Across Europe and the Near East, thousands of hoards have been unearthed, each a window into a world that is simultaneously familiar and incomprehensible. Dating from roughly 2500 to 800 BC, these collections reveal a society profoundly connected to its metals. Bronze, a fusion of copper and tin, was precious, essential for weapons, tools, and ritual objects. The careful concealment of so much wealth, often in locations difficult to access or long forgotten, raises questions. Why would entire caches of valuable bronze be buried rather than used? Were these hoards offerings to deities, a form of wealth storage, or a response to crises, famine, war, or societal upheaval? Some hoards are found near settlements, others in remote hills or rivers. The objects are rarely casual collections. Swords are stacked together, axes aligned, ornaments laid flat. Certain hoards include items seemingly out of place, ingots of tin far from known sources, decorative objects too fragile for practical use, or ceremonial axes too heavy to wield. Each find hints at rituals, trade networks, and social hierarchies that remain partially hidden from our understanding. Mainstream archaeology suggests a combination of practical and symbolic motives. Hoards could have functioned as savings, as offerings to gods, or as deposits meant to be recovered later. Some may mark sites of power or act as talismans to protect communities. Others may relate to times of uncertainty, buried quickly as invasions or climatic upheavals threatened survival. And yet, the patterns defy easy explanation. Some caches are enormous, with hundreds of objects, while others are small, intimate, almost personal. Some are buried near water, others deep in forests or atop hills. What determined their placement? What unrecorded rules guided their composition? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Could some hoards represent a proto-economic system, a Bronze Age equivalent of banks where wealth was centralized and redistributed? Or perhaps they were messages, visible only to those who knew how to read them, a code of status, allegiance, or ritual intent? In certain cases, objects from distant lands appear together, hinting at trade routes that spanned continents, long before the rise of written record-keeping. Could these deposits reflect the ebb and flow of civilizations, the movements of displaced peoples, or even secret societies operating within Bronze Age communities? Some discoveries suggest deliberate destruction, bent swords, broken axes, or deliberately scarred ornaments. Were these objects killed as part of ritual practice, rendered unusable for the living to honor deities, ancestors, or spirits? Or was this a method to remove competitive advantage from enemies, leaving wealth in the ground for spiritual rather than practical purposes? Across Europe, these questions recur, yet no pattern resolves them fully. Consider also the geographic spread of hoards. From Ireland to Poland, from the British Isles to Palestine, the phenomenon appears almost universal. Is this evidence of shared cultural practices, transmitted knowledge, or convergent development, the same human impulse emerging independently in separate societies? And if these hoards were intended as offerings or records, how much knowledge have we lost, buried along with them, waiting for the plow or river to reveal fragments of a vanished worldview? The Bronze Age hoards also confront us with mortality and uncertainty. Many were never recovered by their owners. Why were they abandoned? Did the communities who buried them fall to invasions, famine, or disease? Did the knowledge of their locations die with them, leaving these treasures as silent witnesses to human ambition, fear, and devotion? Handling a recovered hoard today, one feels a deep connection to these ancient people. Their hands shaped the bronze, their eyes decided its placement, their minds weighed its purpose. Yet the story remains incomplete. Were these objects symbols of status, implements of ritual, insurance for troubled times, or something else entirely, now obscured by centuries of soil and silence? Each hoard is a fragment of memory, a puzzle with missing pieces. We can catalog the axes, measure the swords, and trace the metals to distant mines. But we cannot read the intentions of those who buried them, nor can we know the full scope of the networks and beliefs that guided them. In the quiet fields, rivers, and forests where these hoards lie hidden, the Bronze Age whispers still. And as we unearth more, the mystery deepens. What drove these societies to conceal so much? And what secrets remain buried, still waiting to speak across the centuries? And as Bronze Age hoards lie buried, carefully hidden across Europe and the Near East, other mysteries wait quietly, tucked into the corners of history, objects that appear to defy the very timeline of human development. These are the out-of-time bronze artifacts, tools, ornaments, and implements that seem astonishingly advanced for their age, raising questions about technology, culture, and knowledge in the ancient world. Picture a shallow excavation in a windswept valley, the soil disturbed by careful hands. Amid broken pottery shards and traces of a long-forgotten settlement, a small bronze object glints in the sunlight, a tool with a perfectly straight edge, polished beyond what should be possible for its era. Nearby, a bronze pin, intricately designed, rests among bones and charcoal, evidence of daily life. The radiocarbon dating places the site firmly within the late Bronze Age, yet the artifact's craftsmanship appears ahead of its time. How could societies, with the tools and techniques we assume existed then, produce such precision. Across the ancient world, similar discoveries emerge. In Palestine and along the eastern Mediterranean, archaeologists uncover bronze implements with geometries that seem almost mechanical. In Europe, axes, chisels, and decorative objects display a uniformity and refinement that imply sophisticated production methods. Some items appear to have been cast with techniques thought to be developed centuries later. Mainstream explanations often point to skilled artisans, local innovation, or experimental metallurgy. Bronze, after all, is an alloy whose properties can be modified by subtle variations in copper and tin ratios. Certain artifacts may simply reflect the peak of Bronze Age craftsmanship, an isolated flourish of talent preserved by chance. Yet these explanations do not fully satisfy. Why are these objects rare? Why do they appear in geographically disparate locations, sometimes far from the major centers of metallurgical knowledge? And then there are the objects that challenge expectations more sharply still. Some bronze implements show holes drilled with astonishing accuracy, thin sheets shaped with delicate precision, or geometric patterns that would require measurement tools seemingly unavailable in that era. How did their makers achieve such uniformity without standardized templates or advanced instruments? Could there have been techniques now lost to history, secreted away by small communities, or passed down through generations, only to vanish after the late Bronze Age collapse? Speculation, cautiously framed, adds another layer. Some researchers suggest that these artifacts hint at broader knowledge networks, groups of traveling metallurgists, traders, or ritual specialists disseminating techniques across vast regions. Others ask whether certain objects reflect specialized purposes, ceremonial or symbolic, rather than practical use. In that case, mastery could have been concentrated in elite workshops, hidden from the wider population. And some fringe theories whisper further. Did these items represent knowledge inherited from an even older, now vanished culture, one whose technological achievements surpassed the societies we can trace? The context of discovery deepens the intrigue. Many out-of-time bronze artifacts are found in unexpected locations, remote riverbeds, marshes, burial mounds, or inside caves. They are sometimes embedded among everyday tools, sometimes placed with ritual objects or hoards. Was this deliberate, an attempt to preserve rare knowledge, to hide valuable items during times of upheaval, or as offerings to unseen forces? Or are we witnessing a more complex system of social and religious practice, one whose rules remain beyond our comprehension? Consider the implications for our understanding of the Bronze Age. If these artifacts truly exceed the technical abilities assumed for their time, they suggest a world of experimentation, innovation, and specialization far richer than the surviving records indicate. Could there have been centers of knowledge lost entirely to collapse and conquest? Were certain crafts guarded closely, disappearing when political and social structures fractured? And yet, for all the mystery, these artifacts speak to human ingenuity. Their creators observed, experimented, and perfected their craft in ways that resonate across millennia. They remind us that the Bronze Age was not monolithic. It was a mosaic of cultures, skills, and knowledge, with pockets of brilliance hidden in plain sight. Standing before an out-of-time artifact today, whether in a museum or in situ, one is struck by a sense of quiet astonishment. Here is an object, tangible and ancient, that bridges past and present. It carries questions we may never fully answer. Who made it, how they made it, and why they chose to create it in such a manner? Could these objects be hints of forgotten connections, lost technologies, or traditions erased by time? And as we continue to uncover more, scattered across Europe, the Near East, and beyond, the mystery deepens. What other artifacts lie buried, awaiting discovery? What knowledge, now lost to soil and centuries, might redefine our understanding of the Bronze Age? In these objects, meticulously shaped from copper and tin, lies a silent challenge: to peer into a past that is simultaneously familiar and unknowable, and to wonder what other secrets remain hidden beneath the earth. And as Bronze Age civilizations mastered the earth, harnessing metals and mapping landscapes, they also sought to measure the passage of time itself. Across the ancient world, from palace chambers to sacred temples, the steady flow of water became a silent witness to human ambition, ritual, and order. These are the Bronze Age water clocks, enigmatic instruments that hint at sophistication far beyond what we often imagine for societies 3 millennia old. Picture a dim chamber within a palace of the Eastern Mediterranean. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, falling upon a carefully carved vessel resting on a stone pedestal. The vessel, a simple clay or bronze container, holds a measured quantity of water. Tiny holes at its base allow the liquid to drip steadily into a secondary container below. Slowly, imperceptibly, the water descends, marking minutes, hours, perhaps even more. To the ancients, this was not merely a way to track time. It was a bridge between the mortal and the cosmic, a tool for coordinating rituals, trade, and governance. Evidence suggests water clocks existed as early as the 2nd millennium BC, appearing in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and along the Eastern Mediterranean. References in texts hint at their use in temple ceremonies, regulating prayer and sacrifice, as well as in administrative tasks, measuring work shifts or adjudicating legal disputes. Inscriptions from Babylon hint at devices capable of dividing hours into smaller increments, while Egyptian tomb paintings suggest water clocks were part of sacred ceremonies that aligned human activity with the rhythms of the heavens. Yet, despite these glimpses, the true complexity of Bronze Age water clocks remains largely speculative. The surviving artifacts are rare, fragmentary, and often poorly preserved. Clay vessels rarely survive intact, and the precise mechanisms, the holes, the calibration marks, the flow rates, are usually inferred rather than directly observed. How, for instance, did these early engineers account for temperature, evaporation, or water impurities that would alter the flow? How precise could they truly have been? Some scholars suggest that water clocks were surprisingly accurate, capable of measuring time to within minutes over the course of the day. Others propose they were symbolic, serving as ritual tools whose timing mattered less in exact minutes and more in the orderly progression of sacred acts. And then there are more speculative ideas. Could some water clocks have incorporated early forms of gearing or float mechanisms? Could hidden channels, calibrated orifice systems, or even rudimentary escapements have existed, erased from the archaeological record by the passage of millennia? The locations of these clocks deepen the mystery. Many are found in palaces, temples, or high-status tombs, sites associated with elite control and ritual authority. Were they intended to project power, to measure obedience, or to align human action with celestial cycles? Could knowledge of timekeeping have been tightly guarded, shared only among priests, scribes, and rulers? And if so, how far did this knowledge travel across the Bronze Age world? Could the same principles have been known in disparate regions, from Palestine to Mesopotamia, yet independently developed or transmitted through trade networks and cultural exchange? Intriguingly, some water clocks appear to integrate astronomical observation. In Egypt, for example, clocks were used to determine the hours of the night, aligning ritual activity with the rising and setting of stars. Could similar practices have existed elsewhere, in cultures whose artifacts survive only partially, or whose records have vanished? Did Bronze Age peoples possess a conceptual understanding of time that combined observation, engineering, and ritual, a knowledge that has largely disappeared from our historical memory? The artifacts themselves inspire awe. Imagine holding a finely carved bronze vessel, its surface etched with marks or inscriptions, its design guiding the steady flow of water with precision. The object is simple, yet profound. A measure of mortality, a tangible connection between human intention and the relentless passage of seconds. And yet, so much is lost. Most water clocks have decayed, recycled, or been destroyed over the centuries. We reconstruct them through inference, experiments, and textual fragments, never holding a complete picture of their use or significance. Standing before a surviving vessel, or even imagining one in its original context, we confront a silent paradox. The Bronze Age was a world of visible achievements, palaces, fortifications, hoards, maps, but also of invisible sophistication, knowledge that flowed quietly, measured drop by drop, invisible yet transformative. Water clocks remind us that these civilizations were not only builders of bronze and stone, but observers, engineers, and philosophers of time itself. And yet, questions linger. How sophisticated were these early chronometers? How widespread was their knowledge? Did the principles survive, influencing later civilizations, or vanish entirely with the collapse of the late Bronze Age? Could there exist undiscovered water clocks, hidden in tombs, temples, or submerged sites, offering further insight into an ancient understanding of temporal precision? The water continues to flow, even in our imagination, marking moments lost to history. And as we peer into the silent vessels of the past, we are left to wonder, how deeply did Bronze Age peoples understand the rhythm of their world, and what other secrets of time remain hidden, waiting for us to uncover them? And as Bronze Age civilizations learned to measure time through flowing water, they also looked skyward, harnessing the sun itself to mark the passage of hours. Among the most enigmatic instruments to survive, or leave traces in the archaeological record, are the Analemmatic Sundials, circular devices designed to track time through the precise alignment of shadow and sun, their sophistication challenging modern assumptions about Bronze Age astronomy. Imagine a sun-drenched plateau in southern Europe, where winds sweep across low hills and the horizon stretches uninterrupted. Etched into the ground is a series of carefully arranged stones, forming an ellipse. At the center, a solitary standing stone casts its shadow across the marked surface. As the sun arcs across the sky, the shadow moves, intersecting with hour markers calibrated to seasonal variation. The device is elegant, precise, and alive with solar motion, a silent testament to observation and understanding. Analemmatic sundials are a unique form of timekeeping, distinct from the vertical gnomon of later periods. Their design requires knowledge of the sun's declination, an awareness of seasonal change, and the ability to translate that celestial movement into practical measurements on Earth. The principle is deceptively simple. A shadow cast by a movable gnomon marks the hours of the day along an elliptical path, but the execution is complex, requiring observation over long periods, careful calculation, and careful placement. Evidence suggests these sundials date to the late Bronze Age, around 1500 to 1000 BC, appearing across Europe and the Near East. In some regions, stone markers align not only with daily solar arcs, but with solstices and equinoxes, indicating an awareness of broader astronomical cycles. These instruments hint at a society that valued precision, ritual alignment, and the ordering of human activity in harmony with celestial rhythms. Yet, as with many Bronze Age artifacts, mysteries persist. How widespread was this knowledge? Were these sundials tools of daily life or ceremonial instruments reserved for elites and priests? Some researchers suggest they were used to schedule religious observances, agricultural work, or administrative duties, effectively regulating society according to the heavens. Others propose more symbolic interpretations, viewing the devices as sacred spaces where humans could connect with the cosmos, aligning their lives with cycles beyond mortal comprehension. The sophistication of these sundials raises further questions. Could Bronze Age peoples truly calculate the sun's declination with accuracy sufficient to construct such devices? How did they account for latitude, for shifting solar angles, for the subtleties of shadow length over months and years? Experimental reconstructions suggest that even minor miscalculations would result in significant errors, yet surviving examples demonstrate remarkable precision. Was this the result of painstaking observation over generations? Or could some knowledge, now lost, have been transmitted through networks of travelers, astronomers, or ritual specialists? Intriguingly, some analemmatic sundials appear in unexpected contexts. Certain examples are located near burial mounds, ritual enclosures, or settlements with no apparent connection to elite administration. Were they public instruments, shared with communities, or markers of sacred space accessible only to those initiated in their use? And what of the stones themselves? Were they chosen for symbolic significance, sourced from distant quarries, or aligned to other geographic or astronomical features now invisible to us? Speculative interpretations extend further. Some researchers note potential correlations between sundial layouts and early mapping techniques, suggesting an overlap between timekeeping, geography, and cosmology. Could these devices have functioned as both calendars and spatial guides, linking celestial observation with terrestrial knowledge? And might they reflect a broader intellectual tradition of Bronze Age societies, one in which astronomy, ritual, and practical governance were inseparable? Even today, standing near an ancient analemmatic sundial, one can feel a quiet connection to the past. The shadow moves slowly, imperceptibly, yet with authority. It marks hours, seasons, and human curiosity. It is a reminder that Bronze Age peoples did not only shape metal, stone, and landscape, they also sought to understand and measure the invisible rhythms of the sky. And yet, so much remains uncertain. How many sundials have been lost to agriculture, erosion, or the construction of later settlements? How many designs, knowledge, or methods were never recorded, leaving only fragments behind? Could undiscovered instruments exist, hidden in remote hills, valleys, or ceremonial sites, waiting to reveal more about the intellectual and spiritual life of Bronze Age civilizations? The analemmatic sundials endure as silent teachers. Their shadows pass over markings etched thousands of years ago, connecting human ingenuity to celestial order. They invite us to imagine a world where time, sky, and society intertwined in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. And as the sun arcs across the same path Bronze Age observers once measured, we are left to wonder, how deep did their understanding go, and what other secrets of temporal and cosmic knowledge lie buried, waiting to be uncovered? And as Bronze Age civilizations measured time through shadows and flowing water, another mystery lies quietly in the hills of Cyprus, where human ambition and sudden disappearance converge in ways that continue to puzzle archaeologists. This is the story of Pyla-Kokkinokremos, a fortified settlement abandoned almost as soon as it was built, leaving behind walls, streets, and the faint echo of lives interrupted. Imagine a rugged plateau overlooking the eastern Mediterranean, where the sun casts long shadows across low hills and rocky terraces. Here, around 1200 BC, a small community of settlers carved a town from stone, laying out streets, houses, and a defensive wall that encircles the site. From the remains, it is clear the builders intended permanence. Carefully shaped stones, defensive bastions, and communal structures all speak of planning, skill, and foresight. Yet, within a generation, or perhaps even less, the settlement was abandoned, its walls left unfinished in places, its streets empty, its potential unrealized. Pyla-Kokkinokremos sits at a turning point in history. The Late Bronze Age, an era marked by upheaval across the eastern Mediterranean. Cities were collapsing, trade networks faltering, and migrations or invasions unsettling established communities. Yet the precise reason for the settlement's sudden desertion remains unclear. Archaeologists have found no evidence of violent destruction, no burned layers, no mass graves. Instead, the town seems simply left behind, as if the people vanished overnight. Some scholars argue that external pressures may have driven the abandonment. The late Bronze Age collapse saw widespread instability, attacks by sea peoples, disruptions in trade, and the fall of neighboring cities may have made life at Pyla-Kokkinokremos unsustainable. Others point to environmental factors. Water scarcity, soil exhaustion, or disease could have forced inhabitants to seek safer, more fertile lands. But the abruptness and apparent lack of warning complicate these explanations. Why invest so much effort into constructing a fortified settlement only to leave it empty within a generation? Intriguingly, the site's design suggests it was more than a simple outpost. Streets are laid out with intention, buildings are standardized, and defensive walls indicate concern for security. Could this have been a military installation, a refugee settlement, or a hub intended to control trade routes along the coast? And if so, what caused the collapse of its purpose? Was it overtaken by political shifts, economic failure, or perhaps something less tangible, fear, prophecy, or social discord? Some researchers have proposed speculative theories. Could Pyla-Kokkinokremos have been abandoned due to internal social conflict or leadership disputes? Could religious or ritual decisions have prompted the exodus, with the town's residents seeking a new beginning elsewhere? Others consider the possibility of broader networks at play. Trade collapse or regional instability may have made the location untenable, leaving the settlement's builders stranded by forces beyond their control. The abandonment also raises questions about preservation and memory. Unlike cities that were destroyed or built over, Pyla-Kokkinokremos remained largely undisturbed for millennia. Its walls, streets, and building foundations survived beneath wind-blown soil, offering a snapshot of a community frozen in time. Yet the silence of the site is profound. Few artifacts suggest daily life, scattered pottery, tools, and domestic implements, but there are no clear indications of departure rituals, leaving the manner of abandonment enigmatic. Standing today among the ruins, one senses both the ambition and fragility of Bronze Age societies. Here was a town with vision, built to endure, yet left to the wind and sun almost immediately. The plateau echoes with unanswered questions. How many generations lived and labored here? What dreams and plans were interrupted? And what invisible forces, environmental, political, social, or perhaps a combination, compelled them to leave? Pyla-Kokkinokremos reminds us that the Bronze Age was not only an age of construction, innovation, and trade, but also of vulnerability. Communities rose and fell, leaving traces that challenge our understanding of human resilience and foresight. Each abandoned wall and empty street invites reflection on the precariousness of civilization, the delicate balance between ambition and survival. And yet, the mystery persists. Why was this carefully planned settlement forsaken so suddenly? Did its abandonment reflect a regional pattern, part of the broader collapse of the late Bronze Age world, or was it the result of unique circumstances? Could other abandoned sites hold clues, hidden beneath soil and stone, waiting to illuminate the human stories lost to time? As we gaze across the sunlit plateau, with wind sweeping through empty streets and broken walls, the question remains. What caused the people of Pyla-Kokkinokremos to leave behind everything they had built? And what might their story reveal about the fragility, resilience, and complexity of Bronze Age societies? And as settlements rose and fell across the Bronze Age, one of the most dramatic events unfolded far across the Aegean Sea. a force of nature that reshaped an entire civilization and left echoes still visible millennia later. This is the story of the Minoan eruption of Thera, an explosion so massive it shook the Mediterranean world and left questions that continue to puzzle historians, archaeologists, and geologists alike. Picture a tranquil island, its cliffs rising sharply from the turquoise waters, olive groves swaying in the warm wind. Before 1600 BC, Thera, modern-day Santorini, was home to a thriving community, its towns bustling with trade, art, and maritime activity. The Minoans of Crete maintained close contact with the island, exchanging pottery, metals, and ideas. Life proceeded with the rhythm of the sea and sun, and then, in a single cataclysmic event, that rhythm was shattered. The eruption itself was unimaginably powerful. Volcanic ash shot miles into the sky, blanketing the island and drifting across the eastern Mediterranean. Pyroclastic flows scoured valleys, and tsunamis radiated outward, reaching distant coastlines. Entire towns were buried beneath layers of ash, preserving them as snapshots of Bronze Age life frozen in time. Akrotiri, often called the Pompeii of the Aegean, offers a glimpse into daily life interrupted. Frescoes depicting sailors, dancers, and rituals remain vivid, and multi-story houses still stand in partial form, their walls scarred by ash but remarkably intact. Yet, even as we uncover the remnants, many questions remain. How precisely did the eruption influence the Minoan civilization on Crete? Was it a direct cause of decline, triggering societal upheaval through environmental disaster, famine, or disruption of trade? Or did the Minoans already face internal pressures, with the eruption serving as one devastating final blow? The evidence is tantalizing but incomplete. Archaeologists debate the timeline, pointing to discrepancies between radiocarbon dating and historical estimates, leaving the exact sequence of destruction and recovery uncertain. The eruption's scope also raises broader questions about interconnected societies. Tsunami deposits in Crete, layers of volcanic ash in Palestine and Anatolia, and environmental anomalies recorded in tree rings suggest the event's impact extended far beyond Thera itself. How did distant communities perceive the catastrophe? Were stories of smoke-filled skies, tidal waves, and sudden darkness passed along trade networks as myth, prophecy, or historical memory? Could the eruption have influenced early legends, or even the development of religious and cultural narratives across the eastern Mediterranean? Speculative theories add layers to the mystery. Some scholars propose that Thera's eruption inspired the story of Atlantis, a lost civilization swallowed by the sea. Others suggest the disaster triggered migrations, political shifts, or technological adaptation in the aftermath. Could Bronze Age peoples have recorded these events in ways we have yet to fully recognize, perhaps encoded in myths, iconography, or ritual practices? And what of the ash layers themselves, which preserve delicate impressions of daily life, pottery, frescoes, and even human remains, hinting at moments forever lost in the instant of catastrophe? The science of the eruption is also evolving. Volcanologists examine the composition of pumice and tephra, reconstructing the scale of explosions and the volume of material ejected. Some models suggest the eruption may have been among the largest in human history, its energy rivaling modern supervolcanoes. Yet, even with advanced methods, uncertainty persists. Exact timing, sequence of explosions, and their regional impact are still matters of debate. How could such a civilization survive, adapt, or interpret forces beyond comprehension, while others were forever erased from the landscape? Standing today on Thera's cliffs overlooking the caldera, the view is both breathtaking and sobering. The sea sparkles under the sun, the wind carries scents of wild herbs, and the remains of human habitation cling to terraces and hillsides. It is easy to imagine the eruption as a sudden rupture in time, a moment when human life and natural forces collided with staggering intensity. And yet, the silence of the ruins invites reflection. What was lost? What knowledge, art, and culture vanished beneath layers of ash, waiting for centuries to resurface in fragments? The Minoan eruption of Thera reminds us that the Bronze Age was not only an era of human ingenuity, trade, and ritual, but also one of vulnerability to the immense power of nature. It challenges us to consider how societies cope with sudden catastrophe, how memory and history are preserved or erased, and how a single event can ripple across civilizations. And as we study ash layers, frescoes, and coastal deposits, we are left with a question that endures across millennia. How did the peoples of the Bronze Age perceive such overwhelming forces, and what other traces of their experiences remain hidden beneath the earth, waiting to reveal the mysteries of a world both connected and fragile? And as the ashes of Thera settled and the Mediterranean world adjusted to its sudden upheavals, another civilization faced its own gradual, haunting unraveling. This is the story of the Mycenaean Decline, a fading of palaces, cities, and trade networks that marked the end of one of the most powerful societies of the late Bronze Age, leaving behind ruins, unanswered questions, and a legacy shrouded in mystery. Picture the fortified citadels of Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, perched atop hills overlooking fertile plains and strategic valleys. Around 1400 to 1200 BC, these cities were hubs of power, culture, and administration. Cyclopean walls rose in massive stone arcs. Palaces gleamed with frescoes depicting warriors, chariots, and ceremonial feasts, and archives of clay tablets recorded economic transactions and bureaucratic minutiae. Mycenaeans dominated trade routes, exchanging bronze, pottery, and luxury goods across the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean. Life moved with rhythm and order, guided by kings and priestly elites who presided over both wealth and ritual. Yet, by the close of the 13th century BC, a troubling silence begins to appear in the archaeological record. Palaces were destroyed, cities abandoned, and trade networks faltered. Signs of conflict and fire suggest violent events, yet evidence is inconsistent. Some sites were burned, others collapsed gradually. Frescoes were left incomplete, storerooms emptied, and archives abandoned. The suddenness and scale of this decline have left historians grappling with a question that has persisted for centuries. What caused the fall of Mycenaean civilization? Traditional explanations point to external invasions or internal rebellion. Could waves of sea peoples, displaced groups, or marauding neighbors have swept through the Aegean, toppling fortresses and disrupting social order? Or did internal strife, civil wars, uprisings, or political fragmentation erode the very foundations of Mycenaean authority? Archaeologists find traces of fortification repairs and hastily constructed defenses, suggesting anticipation of danger, but no single cause fully accounts for the widespread collapse. Environmental factors also enter the conversation. Evidence of prolonged droughts, soil exhaustion, or crop failures hints at ecological stress that could have weakened cities, undermined trade, and triggered migration. Were these natural pressures amplified by social complexity, leaving urban populations unable to adapt quickly enough? And yet, drought alone seems insufficient to explain the selective destruction of palaces and the apparent targeting of elite centers. Trade disruptions following the Thera eruption may have also played a role. The Minoan civilization, closely intertwined with Mycenaean networks, had suffered catastrophic losses, and the ripple effects could have destabilized economies reliant on maritime commerce. Did the loss of vital connections, along with localized environmental stress and political turmoil, create a perfect storm that the Mycenaeans could not withstand? Speculative theories deepen the intrigue. Some suggest secretive political or religious movements, previously unknown, may have reshaped society from within. Could elite knowledge, ritual authority, or trade monopolies have been undermined by conspiracies or clandestine factions? Others ponder the role of seismic activity in Greece, earthquakes capable of toppling massive walls and triggering panic, yet leaving few archaeological traces that survive millennia. Is it possible that a combination of environmental shocks, social tensions, and external pressures converged in ways we cannot fully reconstruct? The aftermath of Mycenaean decline is equally enigmatic. While many cities were abandoned, some smaller communities persisted, maintaining fragments of cultural and artistic traditions. Pottery and jewelry continue to be produced, but palace-based administration disappears, and writing, Linear B, vanishes for centuries. How did these survivors reinterpret their world, and what knowledge or memory was lost in the destruction of palatial systems? Could these remnants hold hidden clues about governance, trade, or ritual practices now lost to history? Walking among the ruins today, one senses the weight of vanished ambition. Stones stacked for defense, ceremonial spaces, and storerooms hint at order, wealth, and authority now vanished. The silence of the citadels is profound, punctuated only by wind and birdsong, yet it speaks volumes. It tells of societies that thrived, endured, and ultimately unraveled in ways that challenge our understanding of resilience, power, and human vulnerability. And yet, questions linger. Was the collapse sudden or gradual? Were the Mycenaeans victims of forces beyond comprehension? Or did internal weaknesses determine their fate? How much of their knowledge, engineering, trade, artistry, and administration was lost to the ashes? And how did the surviving fragments shape the next centuries of Mediterranean history? The decline of the Mycenaeans reminds us that even the most powerful civilizations are fragile, subject to environmental, social, and political pressures that can erase centuries of achievement in a generation. And as we study walls, frescoes, and archives, we are left to wonder, what hidden factors remain buried beneath ruins, and what untold stories of human ingenuity and failure lie beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered? And as the great palaces of the Mycenaeans fell silent and the Mediterranean world adjusted to upheaval, another enigma quietly vanished from history. The disappearance of Linear A, the script of the Minoans, a writing system that once recorded the pulse of an advanced Bronze Age civilization and now resists all attempts at comprehension. Picture the sunlit corridors of a Minoan palace on Crete, frescoed walls alive with color, and clay tablets neatly arranged in archive rooms. Scribes etched symbols into wet clay, recording goods, trade transactions, and administrative notes. Each mark carried meaning, a precise reflection of society's complex operations. Yet those meanings have eluded modern understanding. Linear A, the earliest known script of the Minoans, thrived between roughly 1800 and 1450 BC, documenting a civilization at the height of its sophistication. And then, almost without trace, it disappeared, replaced by Linear B, a script adapted by the Mycenaeans to record their own language. The sudden vanishing of Linear A raises questions that extend beyond linguistics. How could a fully functional writing system, used widely in administration, trade, and ritual, be lost so completely? Unlike spoken languages, writing is a durable record, inscribed in clay that can survive millennia. Yet despite the survival of thousands of tablets, the meanings of the symbols remain undeciphered. What knowledge, culture, or administrative precision was encoded in those signs? And why did it vanish in tandem with the decline of the Minoan palaces? Some scholars argue that the disappearance of Linear A was a direct consequence of societal collapse. With the fall of Minoan centers, administrative structures disintegrated, scribes were displaced, and literacy confined to smaller, fragmented communities. Linear B, by contrast, was imposed by Mycenaean rulers who adapted their own language to a writing system they borrowed from the Minoans. In this view, Linear A's disappearance was not mysterious in intent, but a byproduct of conquest, assimilation, and the restructuring of social hierarchies. Yet this explanation only deepens the intrigue. Linear A survived in tablets, inscriptions, and seal impressions, some found far from Crete, in the Cyclades, Crete's coastal trade partners, and even in parts of Anatolia and Palestine. Why did these distant uses vanish as well? Did Linear A cease to function as a living script because of social disruption alone? Or were there subtler factors, cultural, religious, or political, that dictated which forms of literacy were preserved? Could the loss of Linear A reflect a deliberate shift in identity or authority, a conscious replacement of one cultural memory with another? The content of Linear A itself is tantalizing. Archaeologists have found inscriptions on administrative tablets listing goods, livestock, and temple offerings, as well as on seals and ritual objects. Patterns suggest a highly organized economy and a structured society, yet without decipherment, the human dimension, the names, stories, and decisions behind the numbers, remains hidden. Could Linear A also have encoded religious knowledge, myth, or historical records, now irretrievably lost? Are we glimpsing only the administrative skeleton of a civilization whose deeper intellectual and cultural life is obscured? Speculative theories extend further. Some researchers have proposed that Linear A may have encoded multiple languages or dialects, making it inherently resistant to decipherment. Others wonder whether aspects of the script incorporated numerical, astronomical, or symbolic information that modern scholars fail to recognize, suggesting an intellectual sophistication perhaps unmatched in the contemporary Mediterranean. Could certain aspects of Minoan knowledge, commerce, engineering, or ritual practice have been inseparably bound to the script, vanishing alongside the tablets themselves? The physical traces of Linear A, scattered across palace ruins, temples, and trade centers, provide few answers. Each clay tablet, fragmentary seal, or inscribed vessel is a silent witness, a frozen moment of communication whose intent and meaning remain elusive. And yet, the consistency and widespread use of the script demonstrate that it was more than isolated curiosity. It was central to a civilization's organization, reflecting a society with complex governance, trade networks, and possibly an evolving intellectual tradition. Standing among the ruins of Knossos, Phaistos, or Zakros today, one can almost imagine the scribes at work, stylus in hand, recording quantities of grain, lists of offerings, or names of traders. Their marks, once alive with meaning, now speak only in mystery. Linear A embodies the fragility of human knowledge, the precariousness of communication, and the ephemeral nature of cultural memory. And yet, even in its silence, it invites reflection. What did the Minoans know and record that we cannot recover? What stories, rituals, and administrative insights have vanished with the script? Could undiscovered inscriptions exist, hidden beneath layers of earth, offering glimpses into a civilization that communicated across generations in symbols now locked away from modern understanding? The disappearance of Linear A is a reminder that the Bronze Age was a world of brilliance and complexity, yet also one of profound vulnerability. As we study fragments of tablets, impressions of seals, and scattered inscriptions, we are left with an enduring question. What secrets of human thought, society, and culture remain buried within these undeciphered symbols, waiting for a future generation to unlock them? And what might they reveal about a civilization that flourished and then silently vanished? And as the mysteries of Minoan literacy deepened with the disappearance of Linear A, one artifact emerges as both a symbol of that enigma and a riddle in its own right: the Phaistos Disc. A singular, circular object, unlike any other known from the Bronze Age, it offers tantalizing glimpses into a civilization that communicated in ways we have yet to decipher, leaving historians and linguists both fascinated and perplexed. Imagine the warm light of a Minoan workshop in Crete around 1700 to 1600 BC. A skilled artisan presses a stylus into wet clay, imprinting a sequence of 241 symbols arranged in spirals from the edge toward the center. Each symbol, depicting humans, animals, tools, or abstract shapes, is carefully crafted, repeated, and ordered in a deliberate manner. Once baked, the disc became a durable record, a portable artifact that survives to this day. Its origin, however, and its meaning remain entirely unknown. Discovered in the ruins of the palace at Phaistos in 1908, the disc stands apart from other Minoan artifacts. Unlike Linear A or Linear B tablets, which were inscribed with uniform lines of script for administrative purposes, the Phaistos Disc presents a symbolic spiral that seems almost ceremonial, almost deliberate in its uniqueness. No other artifact employs the same system of stamped symbols, and no parallel text has ever been found. This raises immediate questions. Was it a form of writing, a mnemonic device, a religious talisman, or something entirely different? And why has no other example survived to guide our understanding? Scholars have examined the disc from multiple angles. Linguists attempt to decipher its sequences, searching for patterns akin to syllabaries or alphabets. Archaeologists consider the context of its discovery, the palace of Phaistos itself, and the possible ceremonial or administrative significance. Material analysts study the clay, the impressions, and the techniques employed in stamping each symbol. Yet after over a century of study, a consensus remains elusive. The disc resists interpretation, and every proposed translation is speculative, often contradicted by new evidence or alternative readings. Some suggest the Phaistos Disc was a sacred object, a talisman meant to encode ritual knowledge, songs, or prayers in a form that was never intended for widespread reading. Others propose it may have been an early attempt at movable type, a technological innovation centuries ahead of its time. Could it have been a record of trade, a ceremonial calendar, or even a mnemonic guide for storytelling? The possibilities stretch across administrative, religious, and cultural domains, yet no theory is universally accepted. The disc's symbolism also adds to its mystique. Figures of humans, tools, animals, and abstract motifs appear in repeated sequences. Are these pictographs representing sounds, words, or ideas? Could the spiral itself carry meaning, symbolizing the cyclical nature of life, ritual time, or cosmic order? Or is it a clever encoding system whose logic has been entirely lost with the fall of the Minoan civilization? The very shape of the disc suggests intentionality, yet its solitary survival hints at a knowledge carefully guarded or ultimately forgotten. The broader context deepens the mystery. Phaistos was a center of Minoan power and creativity, linked to trade networks spanning the eastern Mediterranean. If the disc served a practical purpose, why does no other example exist from contemporaneous sites? Why do Linear A tablets survive elsewhere, yet this artifact stands alone, an isolated witness to a system of communication lost to time? Some scholars speculate that it may have been experimental, a prototype or ceremonial object that never became widespread. Others wonder whether similar artifacts may exist, buried beneath layers of earth, waiting to be discovered. Holding the disc, or even contemplating it, evokes a sense of connection across millennia. We see the careful impressions of a human hand, deliberate choices etched into clay, and yet we are barred from understanding the message. The artifact embodies the ingenuity, creativity, and intellectual sophistication of the Minoans, while simultaneously reminding us of the fragility of knowledge. One society's innovation can, in the span of centuries, become the future's mystery. And yet, the Phaistos Disc continues to whisper across time. Could it encode information about rituals, trade, or celestial cycles? Might it contain a message that only contemporary Minoans could read, now forever hidden from us? Is it a singular work of art, a prototype, or part of a larger undiscovered corpus of texts? Each question opens another layer of fascination, revealing the limits of our understanding and the richness of what has been lost. The disc challenges us to consider the vast complexity of Bronze Age societies, their knowledge, their systems of communication, and the delicate threads by which civilization preserves and loses information. As we trace the spirals of its symbols with our eyes, we are left with a profound sense of curiosity and the humbling realization that the Minoans once held secrets that remain silent to this day. What stories, instructions, or wisdom lie encoded in the Phaistos Disc, waiting to illuminate a world we thought we knew, yet can only imagine? And as the Phaistos Disc continues to baffle and intrigue, another enigma of Minoan culture emerges, not in clay or script, but in the delicate figurines unearthed from the ruins of Crete's palaces, the Minoan snake goddess figurines. Small yet arresting, these statuettes depict women holding serpents aloft, their eyes wide and commanding, their bodies adorned with intricate garments. They offer a glimpse into a society that embraced symbolism, ritual, and perhaps powers that remain elusive to modern understanding. Picture the dim interior of a Minoan shrine, the scent of incense lingering in the air. On a low altar, a snake slithers across stone tiles, mirrored by the stylized forms in terracotta. The figurine's figure stands upright, her skirt flaring, bare-breasted, arms raised with serpents entwined around them. Her gaze seems to pierce through time, a silent sentinel observing centuries of human curiosity and interpretation. Thousands of years later, these statuettes still convey a sense of purpose and authority, yet their exact meaning has slipped beyond our grasp. Discovered primarily in the palace of Knossos, the figurines date from roughly 1600 to 1450 BC, the height of Minoan civilization. Scholars have debated their function. Were they ritual objects, symbols of fertility, representations of a goddess, or tokens of protective magic? The serpents themselves evoke both reverence and fear, creatures associated with regeneration, death, or spiritual power across many ancient cultures. Yet no inscriptions accompany the figurines, leaving their precise significance a matter of conjecture. Some theories suggest that the snake goddess embodied divine authority over life and death, fertility and domestic or agricultural cycles. The raised arms, holding serpents, may symbolize control over forces that humans could not command, a visual representation of mastery over nature's hidden power. Others propose that these figurines were used in household rituals, perhaps to protect homes from misfortune, illness, or spiritual intrusion. Could they have been objects of worship, instructive icons, or even a combination of both? Intriguingly, the figurine's design hints at a sophisticated understanding of both form and symbolism. The flaring skirts, detailed bodices, and delicate gestures reflect not only aesthetic sensibility, but also coded meaning. Could the patterns in their clothing indicate rank, status, or affiliation with a particular religious cult? Were they meant to convey a narrative or doctrine understood only by initiates? And if so, what knowledge or belief has been lost to time, leaving us with forms but not context? The broader context of Minoan religion adds further complexity. Unlike contemporary civilizations in Mesopotamia or Egypt, which left extensive textual records, the Minoans communicated their beliefs primarily through art, architecture, and symbolic objects. Frescoes, pottery, and figurines provide glimpses into ritual and social life, but interpretation relies heavily on conjecture. The snake goddess figurines in particular challenge scholars. They seem central to religious expression, yet their singularity and recurring motifs suggest a carefully curated system of belief now invisible to us. Speculative perspectives extend beyond the immediate ritual context. Some researchers suggest that the serpents may have represented chthonic powers, linking the figurines to underworld deities or cycles of renewal. Others propose that the figures were protective talismans, their presence invoking spiritual oversight over palace precincts or domestic spaces. Could they have encoded cosmological knowledge, seasonal rhythms, or instructions for ceremonial practice, accessible only to those trained in Minoan traditions? And what of the interplay between female power, authority, and spiritual agency? Was this an early articulation of divine feminine energy within a complex society? The very survival of these artifacts amplifies their mystery. Terracotta and faience withstand centuries, yet they are fragile, their survival often accidental. Were many more snake goddess figurines lost to decay, leaving us with a tantalizingly incomplete record? If so, what patterns, variations, or evolutions in form and symbolism might have existed across Minoan society, now forever hidden beneath the ruins and soil of Crete? Standing before a snake goddess figurine today, one feels both connection and distance. The figure's poised stance, serpents in hand, and commanding gaze evoke a human presence that transcends time. Yet its voice remains silent. It invites contemplation not only of what the Minoans believed, but also of what knowledge can vanish when no written records survive. The figurine embodies the fragility of understanding, a bridge to a civilization whose spiritual and symbolic world is largely inaccessible. And yet, questions persist. Were these figurines central to palace cults, household rituals, or regional traditions? Did they reflect a pantheon, a singular goddess, or a more abstract spiritual principle? Could future discoveries reveal a broader network of religious practice, or are we forever limited to interpreting fragments, glimpses, and shadows of Minoan belief? The snake goddess figurines remind us that the Bronze Age was not only a period of monumental construction, trade, and political power, but also of profound symbolic and spiritual sophistication. As we examine each delicate arm, each coiled serpent, we are left with a lingering sense of wonder. What beliefs, rituals, and knowledge did these figures embody, and how much of the Minoan world remains hidden in plain sight waiting for discovery? And as the Minoan world's spiritual and artistic legacies intrigue us, our attention shifts eastward to the lands of Anatolia, where another Bronze Age civilization flourished. Age civilization quietly rose to prominence. The Hittites, a people whose cities, laws, and conquests would later rival those of Egypt and Babylon, yet whose origins remain shrouded in mystery, their story partially obscured by time, legend, and scarce early records. Picture the rugged highlands of central Anatolia, plateau and mountains stretching as far as the eye can see. Here, around 2000 to 1700 BC, small settlements began to consolidate, their inhabitants building fortified villages, cultivating land, and forging metal tools that would give them a technological edge. Yet, the question persists. Who were these people before they became kings, scribes, and warriors? Where did the Hittites come from, and how did a previously obscure group rise to dominate a region that had been home to millennia of cultures and migration? Early scholarship suggested that the Hittites appeared fully formed in historical records around 1600 BC, suddenly capable of fielding armies, administering cities, and engaging diplomatically with other Bronze Age powers. Their sudden visibility raises a puzzle. Were they indigenous to Anatolia, a continuation of older societies whose traces remain buried? Or did they migrate from regions to the north, east, or west, absorbing local populations while introducing their own language and cultural practices? Linguistic evidence hints at Indo-European roots, but exactly how, when, and why these peoples arrived in Anatolia is still debated. Archaeological finds offer tantalizing yet inconclusive clues. Sites like Hattusa, the Hittite capital, show evidence of urban planning, monumental architecture, and advanced metallurgy. Tablets, written in cuneiform, reveal legal codes, treaties, and correspondence with distant powers, demonstrating that by the Late Bronze Age, the Hittites were fully integrated into the complex political and cultural landscape of the Near East. But before this flourishing, the early Hittite settlements are much harder to trace. What did their world look like when they were still forming, still gathering the social cohesion that would enable kings like Hattusili I and Mersili Wars to lead military campaigns and negotiate with Egypt? Some scholars suggest that Hittite emergence was linked to broader migratory movements of Indo-European-speaking peoples across Europe and Western Asia. Could these early migrants have carried with them not only language, but religious practices, social hierarchies, and technological knowledge that allowed them to establish dominance in a landscape already populated by complex societies? Yet, tangible archaeological evidence of such migrations remains scarce, leaving the narrative fragmentary and speculative. Other theories focus on cultural assimilation. Perhaps the Hittites were not newcomers, but a coalition of indigenous Anatolian groups who gradually adopted new linguistic and political frameworks. Could the apparent sudden rise of Hittite power reflect a process of internal consolidation, the unification of previously independent communities under a common identity? If so, what motivated such unification? Was it necessity in the face of competing kingdoms, or the charisma and vision of early leaders whose names have survived only through later tablets and inscriptions? The Hittites also intrigue because of their interactions with surrounding civilizations. Their treaties with Babylon, confrontations with Egypt, and influence over regions extending to Palestine hint at a people highly aware of diplomacy and strategy. Yet the mechanisms of their ascent remain opaque. How did a relatively small group establish such far-reaching influence? Was it military innovation, trade networks, strategic marriages, or an intricate blend of cultural assimilation and adaptation? Could aspects of their society, now invisible, hold the key to understanding their rise? Even material culture raises questions. Early Hittite pottery, religious iconography, and architectural styles show a mixture of influences, some reminiscent of Anatolian traditions, others echoing distant Indo-European aesthetics. Did these elements reflect migration, trade, conquest, or creative synthesis? And what of the Hittite language itself, one of the earliest attested Indo-European tongues? Does its survival in clay tablets hint at a deeper, older linguistic landscape yet to be fully understood? Standing today among the ruins of Hattusa, the massive stone gates, fortified walls, and remnants of temples evoke both grandeur and mystery. One can imagine the early Hittites moving through valleys and highlands, organizing communities, negotiating with neighbors, and building the foundations of an empire. Yet the silence of the pre-imperial period persists, leaving only tantalizing glimpses of origins and unanswered questions. The story of the Hittites' origins reminds us that even the most powerful civilizations can emerge from obscurity, their roots entwined with migrations, environmental pressures, and cultural exchanges now partially hidden beneath layers of history. And as we examine early settlements, inscriptions, and artifacts, we are left to wonder, who were the people before the kings, scribes, and armies? What knowledge, beliefs, and experiences did they carry into Anatolia? And what traces of their journey remain buried, waiting to illuminate a story that is still only partially told? And as the origins of the Hittites continue to intrigue, so too does the sudden and dramatic collapse of their empire, a disappearance as enigmatic as their rise. By the late 13th century BC, the mighty Hittite state, once stretching across central Anatolia and into northern Syria, had crumbled. Cities that had thrived under kings like Suppiluliuma I and Mursili II were abandoned, palaces burned, and administrative systems dismantled. The questions that emerge are stark and haunting. How could such a powerful and sophisticated civilization vanish almost overnight, leaving behind ruins, tablets, and tantalizing mysteries? Imagine walking through the ruins of Hattusa, the Hittite capital, during the empire's twilight. Massive stone gates still stand, though empty. Temple courtyards, once echoing with chants and rituals, are silent. Clay tablets lie in fragments, their messages abruptly cut off. Streets that once bustled with merchants, scribes, and artisans are now overgrown. Archaeological evidence hints at sudden destruction. Burn layers, collapsed fortifications, scattered artifacts. But the causes remain uncertain, leaving historians to piece together fragments of a story that is incomplete at best. Traditional explanations point to invasions by external forces. The so-called Sea Peoples, marauding groups moving through the eastern Mediterranean, may have attacked Hittite cities, contributing to the downfall. Evidence of conflict is present, but it is uneven. Some regions were destroyed violently, while others show signs of gradual abandonment. Could these incursions have been coordinated, or were they opportunistic raids exploiting internal weakness? And how much did Hittite resilience delay the inevitable collapse, if at all? Environmental factors likely played a role as well. Drought, famine, and agricultural disruption are evident in paleo-environmental records from the region. Crop failures could have weakened city-states, undermined trade, and caused social unrest. Was the collapse accelerated by climate stress, a silent force undermining the very foundation of Hittite society? Could shifts in rainfall or temperature have disrupted not just food supplies, but the intricate network of trade routes that sustained cities and maintained political cohesion across the empire? Yet internal factors may have been equally decisive. The Hittite Empire, like many complex societies, relied on centralized authority, a network of vassals, and a bureaucracy maintained by elite scribes. Evidence of administrative strain, succession crises, and possible civil unrest suggests that political fragility may have amplified the effects of external threats. Did infighting or contested kingship weaken the state at precisely the moment when external pressures were intensifying? Could internal collapse have been the tipping point, making even minor external attacks devastating? Speculative theories deepen the intrigue. Some scholars suggest that the fall of the Hittites was part of a larger systemic collapse affecting the entire late Bronze Age Mediterranean world. Egypt, the Mycenaeans, and cities in the Levant all experienced turmoil during this period. Were the Hittites victims of interconnected crises, trade disruptions, migrations, and social upheaval that collectively unraveled multiple civilizations? Could the movements of peoples across the region, driven by environmental, political, or unknown factors, have destabilized societies simultaneously, creating a domino effect whose scale and speed we can barely comprehend? Material evidence offers further puzzles. Palaces and fortresses show signs of deliberate destruction, yet some cities were abandoned without clear evidence of warfare. Administrative tablets cease abruptly, as if the bureaucratic machinery itself had ground to a halt. Was this sudden silence the result of deliberate evacuation, ritualized abandonment, or chaotic flight? And what happened to the Hittite people themselves? Did they disperse into neighboring regions, merge with other societies, or were they annihilated in conflicts now only hinted at by archaeological traces? Standing today among the remnants of the Hittite heartland, one senses both grandeur and fragility. Colossal gates, carved reliefs, and remnants of temples evoke a civilization at its height, capable of commanding armies, negotiating treaties, and managing a sprawling empire. Yet the layers of ash, debris, and empty streets speak of vulnerability, of societies that can unravel despite wealth, power, and sophistication. The collapse of the Hittite Empire is a reminder that even the most organized and formidable civilizations are not immune to sudden change. As we examine the ruins, the burned tablets, and the scattered artifacts, we are confronted with questions that resist easy answers. What combination of warfare, environmental stress, and political instability led to the empire's demise? How much of this story is hidden beneath layers of soil and forgotten history, waiting for discovery? And perhaps most haunting of all, what knowledge, traditions, and cultural achievements were lost in the collapse, leaving only fragments for us to interpret millennia later? The Hittites' disappearance invites reflection not only on their own civilization, but on the delicate balance of societies across time. Their rise and fall, intertwined with mystery, migration, and environmental forces, echoes a warning and a fascination that human ingenuity and power can flourish brilliantly, yet vanish, leaving us with ruins, riddles, and the enduring question of what remains hidden, just out of reach, in the shadows of history. And as the ruins of the Hittite Empire fade into the mists of time, our journey moves westward to a site that has captured the imagination of storytellers and archaeologists alike: Troy. A city immortalized in epic poetry, yet shrouded in uncertainty. Was it the legendary fortress besieged for a decade in the tales of Homer, or a much more complex and elusive reality? The question of Troy's true identity continues to puzzle scholars, challenging our understanding of Bronze Age Anatolia and the interplay between history and legend. Picture the windswept plains near the Dardanelles, where layers of earth rise in a tell known as Hisarlik. Archaeologists have uncovered at least 9 successive settlements stacked atop one another, each city built upon the remnants of its predecessor. The oldest layers date back to the early Bronze Age, around 3000 BC, while the late Bronze Age strata, circa 1700 to 1200 BC, are most often associated with the legendary Trojan War. Yet which of these layers, if any, corresponds to the Troy of Homer's narrative? And what do the material remains tell us about the people who once lived here? Excavations reveal fortified walls, complex gateways, and traces of palatial structures, evidence of a city of considerable significance. Yet there is ambiguity. Some layers show signs of destruction, others of peaceful abandonment. How do we reconcile these archaeological realities with stories of a 10-year siege, armies clashing, and a city burned to the ground? Could the Homeric epics reflect actual events, compressed and dramatized over centuries? Or are they more myth than history, a poetic lens through which the Bronze Age is remembered? Troy's location at a crossroads of trade and culture further complicates the mystery. The city sat between Aegean civilizations, Anatolian kingdoms, and the broader Eastern Mediterranean, making it a hub of commerce and influence. Artifacts suggest interactions with Mycenaean Greece, Anatolia, and even regions further east. Did these exchanges elevate Troy's strategic importance, drawing the attention of powerful neighbors? And could the legendary war reflect real conflicts over trade routes, resources, or regional dominance, rather than purely personal vendettas and heroic narratives? The stratigraphy of Hisarlik itself deepens the intrigue. Troy 6 and Troy 7a, dating roughly between 1700 and 1200 BC, show evidence of impressive fortifications, including high walls and towers, suggesting the city was prepared for attack. Signs of fire and destruction appear in certain layers, yet the scale and causes remain debated. Were these catastrophic events caused by invading armies, earthquakes, internal revolt, or a combination of factors? And if Troy was indeed a target of Mycenaean aggression, why is direct evidence of battle so sparse and enigmatic? Some scholars turn to textual references beyond Homer, including Hittite records mentioning a place called Wilusa, which many identify with Troy. These texts hint at treaties, alliances, and regional disputes, suggesting that Troy, or a city like it, was part of the complex geopolitical landscape of the Late Bronze Age. Could Wilusa have been the historical kernel behind the epic narrative, transformed over centuries into the tale of Helen, Paris, and the Trojan horse? Or does linking myth to text risk oversimplifying the layers of history, politics, and storytelling entwined in this ancient site? Even the city's identity raises deeper questions about culture and influence. Pottery, inscriptions, and architectural features indicate a blend of Anatolian and Aegean traditions, reflecting Troy's position as a meeting point of civilizations. Could this cultural synthesis have contributed to its legendary status, making it a symbol of both wealth and conflict in the imaginations of neighboring peoples? And what of the everyday lives of its inhabitants, farmers, artisans, traders, whose stories remain buried beneath meters of sediment, their voices largely silent? Standing on the mound today, the sun casting long shadows over the remnants of walls and foundations, one senses both continuity and disappearance. Troy was real, yet it is not fully knowable. Each layer, each artifact, each architectural remnant offers clues, yet also deepens the enigma. Was it the city of legend, the center of a historical conflict, or a confluence of both? A place where memory, myth, and history intertwine so seamlessly that separating them may be impossible? The question of Troy's true identity invites us to ponder the fragility of knowledge and the persistence of human imagination. What events inspired the epics, and how closely do they mirror reality? Were the walls and towers witnesses to war, diplomacy, or daily life interrupted by occasional violence? And beneath the layers of earth, what further secrets remain hidden, waiting to illuminate a civilization that continues to straddle the boundary between myth and history? In contemplating Troy, we are reminded that the Bronze Age was a world of complexity, where cities rose and fell, cultures mingled, and stories endured long after the stones had crumbled. The legend endures, yet the truth remains elusive, a mystery as layered, profound, and compelling as the city itself. As the mists of legend and war fade from Troy, our attention now drifts beneath the waves of the Eastern Mediterranean, to a discovery that has transformed our understanding of Bronze Age trade and interaction: the Uluburun Shipwreck. Resting on the seafloor off the coast of southwestern Anatolia, this vessel, dating to the late 14th century BC, offers a window into a world of commerce, diplomacy, and human ambition, yet one that still holds profound mysteries. Picture the azure waters near the tip of modern-day Turkey, where currents whisper over rocks and sand. For centuries, the ship lay hidden beneath layers of sediment, its timbers slowly decaying, its cargo quietly preserved by the sea. Then, in the 1980s, divers uncovered a trove of artifacts: copper and tin ingots, intricately crafted jewelry, ivory, ostrich eggs, Canaanite amphorae, and exotic goods from lands as distant as the Aegean, the Levant, and perhaps even Egypt. It was a floating marketplace, frozen in time, revealing connections that spanned the eastern Mediterranean and beyond. The ship itself, though long vanished except for traces of its hull, suggests remarkable maritime knowledge. Its construction points to skilled shipwrights capable of crafting a vessel large enough to carry over 10 tons of copper and nearly a ton of tin, alongside luxury goods destined for palaces or elite consumers. Who built this ship, and under whose authority did it sail? Was it a private merchant venture, a state-sponsored trade mission, or something in between? And what routes did it traverse, navigating seas that were both lifelines and hazards to Bronze Age civilizations? The cargo deepens the enigma, The sheer diversity of materials, tin from Central Asia, copper possibly from Cyprus, glass beads from Egypt, resins from Lebanon, illustrates a vast and sophisticated network of exchange. Yet questions remain. How were these trade networks organized, and what systems of knowledge and negotiation allowed for the coordination of goods across such distances? Were there intermediaries whose names and roles are now lost to history, or did merchants and rulers communicate directly across kingdoms? Among the most striking discoveries are the items of art and prestige, gold jewelry, carved ivory, and exotic shells. These objects suggest that the ship was not merely transporting raw materials, but also the symbols of wealth and power that reinforced political and social hierarchies. Who were the intended recipients of such treasures? Did they represent tribute, trade goods, or gifts designed to cement alliances? And why, with so much value aboard, did the ship meet its untimely end beneath the waves? The cause of the shipwreck remains a subject of debate. Some propose it was caught in a violent storm, a sudden tempest that overwhelmed even the most experienced crew. Others suggest human factors, piracy, navigational error, or conflict among competing maritime powers. Could the ship have been deliberately scuttled to hide its cargo, or was it simply a tragic accident, a single miscalculation that condemned centuries of commerce to the seabed? Equally compelling is what the ship reveals about the late Bronze Age economy and cultural exchange. Each item aboard, carefully arranged and preserved, tells a story of interaction between civilizations whose histories are often studied in isolation. The Uluburun Shipwreck demonstrates that Egypt, Anatolia, Cyprus, the Levant, and the Aegean were not isolated powers, but part of a connected and interdependent system. Trade was not only a matter of goods, but also of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices moving across the Mediterranean like invisible currents. Yet mysteries persist. Why do certain items appear in abundance while others are scarce? Does the cargo reflect routine commercial practice or extraordinary circumstances? And what of the ship's crew? How many sailed aboard, and what were their origins, skills, and fates? The sea preserves some answers and conceals others, leaving us to reconstruct human experience from fragments and inference. Standing today on the rocky Turkish coast, one can imagine the Uluburun ship cutting through calm seas or battling rising waves, its hull creaking under the weight of its precious load. The ship was a bridge between lands, a symbol of human ingenuity and the ambition of Bronze Age civilizations. And yet, the deeper it sank into the Mediterranean sands, the more it became a time capsule and a riddle, preserving both knowledge and profound uncertainty. The Uluburun Shipwreck reminds us that history is often submerged beneath layers of circumstance, waiting to be unearthed or interpreted. As we examine its cargo, its construction, and the trace of its journey, we are confronted with enduring questions. Who orchestrated this complex trade, and for what purpose? What untold stories lie hidden among the scattered ingots, exotic artifacts, and fragmented hull timbers? And perhaps most tantalizingly, what other secrets of Bronze Age maritime networks remain concealed beneath the waves, waiting for the curiosity of future generations to bring them to light? The vessel's silent testimony invites reflection on the fragility and ambition of human endeavor. A single ship, lost to the sea, yet revealing a world more interconnected, sophisticated, and mysterious than we had imagined. One that continues to challenge our understanding of the Bronze Age and the civilizations that navigated its vast, uncertain waters. As the wreck of the Uluburun ship rests silently beneath the Mediterranean waves, we turn our gaze to one of the most striking and enigmatic components of its cargo, the Oxhide Ingots. These large, roughly rectangular blocks of copper, their corners tapered like the shoulders of a massive beast, have captivated archaeologists, historians, and metallurgists alike. They are physical embodiments of trade, technology, and ambition in the Late Bronze Age, yet their origins and purpose continue to provoke questions that resist simple answers. Imagine standing on the deck of a Bronze Age trading vessel, gazing down at stacks of glinting copper ingots, their surfaces uneven, marked by hammering and molding. Each ingot weighs between 20 and 30 kilograms, heavy enough to challenge even the strongest crew, yet standardized enough to suggest careful planning and forethought. Why were these ingots shaped like the flayed hide of an ox, rather than simple rectangular bars? Was it a practical design for transport, allowing them to be lashed together and carried with relative ease across decks and through treacherous seas? Or did the distinctive shape carry symbolic meaning, a mark of identity or status recognized by merchants, kings, and craftsmen across the Mediterranean? The provenance of the Oxhide ingots deepens the mystery. Isotopic analysis points largely to Cypriot copper, yet some ingots reveal signatures from other, more distant mines. This implies a network of extraction, refinement, and distribution far more sophisticated than previously imagined. How were these operations organized? Did kings and local elites control production, or were independent artisans and merchant guilds responsible for shaping and trading these masses of metal? And how did these networks function in a world without coinage, banking systems, or modern communication? The scale of the trade is equally astonishing. The Uluburun ship alone carried over 10 tons of copper and oxide ingots, accompanied by nearly a ton of tin, exotic goods, and luxury items. Each ingot represents a portion of a vast economic web, linking the mines of Cyprus with palace complexes in Anatolia, Egypt, and the Levant. Were these ingots raw material for weapons, tools, or monumental artworks? Could they have been tribute, tax payments, or trade goods exchanged for food, textiles, or elite luxury items? And why do so many ingots vanish from the historical record once delivered? Were they rapidly transformed into objects that themselves have now been lost to time? The Oxhide ingots also hint at the sophistication of Bronze Age maritime trade. Their tapered shape may have made them easier to stack, secure, and transport over long distances by sea. But what of the human dimension? Who oversaw these shipments? Were crews specialized in handling such heavy cargo? And what dangers did they face while navigating unpredictable waters? Could the very design of the ingots reflect lessons learned over generations, a convergence of practicality, safety, and standardization in an era without modern cranes or docks? Beyond their material utility, Oxide ingots raise broader questions about cultural and economic connectivity. Similar ingots have been found in shipwrecks and archaeological sites across the eastern Mediterranean, from Cyprus to the Levant, Anatolia, and even the Aegean. Their uniformity suggests a shared system of weights and measures, understood by merchants and administrators over vast distances. How did knowledge of such standards spread? Was there an informal language of trade recognized by diverse civilizations, or did royal palaces dictate the rules that bound distant regions together? Yet, mysteries endure. Some ingots exhibit markings, stamps, or inscriptions that hint at ownership, origin, or intended destination, but the meanings of these symbols are often uncertain. Were these early brands ensuring authenticity in a complex network of trade? Or were they religious or ritualistic, connecting the ingots to protective ceremonies, offerings, or divine sanction? And why did the tradition of oxide ingots vanish, leaving only scattered remnants and tantalizing references in the archaeological record? The oxide ingots are more than mere blocks of copper. They are vessels of story and speculation. They testify to the ambition, skill, and ingenuity of Bronze Age civilizations, yet they also obscure as much as they reveal. How did societies coordinate the extraction, production, transport, and distribution of these heavy metal blocks across seas fraught with peril. How much of this sophisticated economy depended on human knowledge, trust, and negotiation rather than written contracts or legal frameworks? As we stand today, contemplating the ingots recovered from the Uluburun wreck and other sites, we are confronted with the sheer scale and complexity of late Bronze Age trade networks. Each Oxhide ingot is a reminder of connections that spanned kingdoms and seas, of human endeavor both remarkable and fragile. And yet, for all the evidence unearthed, the full story remains tantalizingly out of reach. Who controlled these flows of copper? What rituals or standards guided their production? And what other secrets of Bronze Age commerce and technology lie buried, still waiting to be discovered beneath earth and sea? The Oxide ingots challenge us to consider the unseen, the interwoven and the enduring mysteries of human innovation. They speak of wealth, power, and knowledge, yet also of questions unanswered, histories partially told, and the enduring allure of the unknown in a world that continues to fascinate and perplex. As the copper of Uluburun and the Oxide ingots fade from memory beneath the waves, our journey turns northward to a forested marshland in the Ural Mountains of Russia, where a discovery challenges assumptions about the origins of human expression and spiritual life in the Bronze Age, the Shigir idol. Standing over 5 meters tall and carved from larch, this remarkable figure is one of the oldest wooden sculptures ever discovered, radiocarbon dated to around 9,500 BC, placing it far earlier than most monumental works traditionally associated with the Bronze Age. Its presence invites us to reconsider not only the technical abilities of prehistoric peoples, but also the symbolic and ritualistic life that drove their creativity. Imagine walking along the peat bogs where the Shigir idol was first unearthed in 1890, its surface darkened by millennia in the marsh, yet the intricate carvings preserved with astonishing clarity. Geometric patterns, zigzags, and deeply incised symbols cover its surface, punctuated by stylized faces that seem to watch from multiple angles. Who carved this figure, and for what purpose? Was it an object of veneration, a marker of territorial claim, or a complex mnemonic device encoding knowledge about the world, the seasons, or spiritual cosmology? Each line and form appears deliberate, yet their precise meanings remain elusive. The technical sophistication of the idol is striking. Carved from a single larch trunk, it required tools capable of cutting and hollowing dense wood with precision. The age of the idol suggests that its creators possessed not only physical skill but also a conceptual understanding of symbolic representation that challenges assumptions about Mesolithic societies. How did they organize such labor? Was the creation of the Shigir idol a communal act, reflecting shared beliefs, or the work of a specialized artisan guided by ritual knowledge? Its style raises further questions. The abstract motifs and anthropomorphic faces hint at a symbolic language, perhaps a form of proto-writing or spiritual notation, though no Rosetta-like key exists to decipher it. Could these symbols represent deities, ancestral spirits, or cosmic forces? Were they intended to communicate with the living, the dead, or both? And what did the multiple faces signify? Watchers, protectors, or perhaps witnesses to sacred rites performed in its presence? The context of its deposition adds another layer of intrigue. Found buried in a peat bog, the Shigir idol was preserved in an environment that suggests deliberate placement. Was it intentionally hidden for safekeeping, set as a ritual marker, or left as a dedication to forces unseen? The bog's properties, which slowed decay, have allowed us to glimpse a form of human creativity rarely captured in organic materials. What other expressions of belief and artistry might have existed in similar environments, now lost to time and decay? Speculative theories abound. Some propose that the idol was a central figure in a spiritual landscape, a totem connecting humans with nature, ancestors, or the cosmos. Others suggest that it functioned as a mnemonic tool, encoding knowledge about migration, hunting, or seasonal cycles in a society without written language. Could the Shigir idol reflect a shared cultural or ritual practice across vast territories, a precursor to the monumental art and symbolism of later Bronze Age civilizations? The idol also invites reflection on the continuity of human imagination. Despite its age, it evokes a universal sense of mystery and presence. The faces carved into its surface seem to engage the viewer, creating an interaction across millennia. How did the original observers respond to it? Did they recognize themselves reflected in its forms, or did they approach it with reverence, fear, or awe? And how much of its meaning was encoded in gesture, placement, and ritual, now invisible to modern eyes? Standing before the Shigir idol today, even in photographs or reconstructions, one senses both mastery and enigma. Its geometric precision, symbolic complexity, and monumental scale speak of a people capable of abstract thought and communal endeavor far earlier than once believed. Yet it also reminds us of how much has been lost. The ceremonies, stories, and daily lives that surrounded it, the relationships between humans, environment, and spirit, all obscured by the passage of time. The Shigir idol challenges assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities, artistic intent, and spiritual consciousness. Its survival invites reflection on the deep history of symbolic thought, the transmission of knowledge across generations, and the mysteries that still linger in peat bogs, forests, and landscapes untouched by modern eyes. Who carved it? Why? And what did it mean to those who first beheld it? And perhaps most tantalizingly, what other monuments and expressions lie hidden in the earth, waiting to reveal the thoughts, beliefs, and ambitions of the people who shaped the dawn of human civilization? The Shigir idol stands as a silent witness, a testament to human creativity and enigma, bridging the Mesolithic and Bronze Age, inviting us to contemplate a world of ritual, knowledge, and mystery that continues to defy understanding. As the Shigir idol fades into the forests and marshes of ancient Europe, our journey now carries us to the sun-drenched rivers and plains of southwestern Iberia, where a civilization whispered of in legend and partially glimpsed in archaeology continues to elude full understanding. Tartessos. Referred to by Greek and Roman writers as a wealthy and enigmatic city or region, Tartessos is often described as a land of rivers, metals, and trade, yet its precise location, culture, and historical reality remain tantalizingly uncertain. Picture the Guadalquivir River as it winds through fertile plains, its waters reflecting the warm glow of a Mediterranean sun. Here, over 2 millennia ago, seafarers and traders may have navigated these currents, bringing exotic goods, metals, and ideas from distant lands. Classical sources describe Tartessos as fabulously rich in silver, gold, and tin, and its people as skilled artisans and merchants. Archaeological evidence hints at settlements, fortified towns, and metallurgical activity, yet no definitive city has been uncovered to match the grandeur of legend. How could a civilization so prominent in ancient texts leave such an elusive archaeological footprint? The wealth attributed to Tartessos suggests deep connections with the wider Bronze Age world. Metals extracted from its hinterlands may have reached Egypt, the Aegean, and the Western Mediterranean, linking Iberian mines to the expansive trade networks already glimpsed in places like Uluburun. Were the Tartessians orchestrating trade themselves, or did they function as intermediaries in a web of merchants spanning continents? And how did they accumulate the knowledge, skill, and resources necessary to extract, refine, and transport metals in an age without modern infrastructure? Equally compelling is the culture hinted at by the sparse evidence. Inscriptions in the enigmatic Tartessian script, simple yet sophisticated ceramics, and jewelry suggest a society with its own identity, traditions, and symbolic systems. Yet the script has not been fully deciphered, leaving the language, beliefs, and governance of Tartessos shrouded in mystery. What stories did they tell? What rituals did they perform, and what worldview guided their interaction with the rivers, the sea, and the metals beneath the earth? Legends surrounding Tartessos also raise intriguing possibilities. Herodotus and other classical authors spoke of a city or region of extraordinary wealth, sometimes describing it as lost or abandoned. Some scholars speculate that Tartessos was submerged or destroyed by natural catastrophe, perhaps river flooding, seismic activity, or environmental changes. Could such events explain the scarcity of physical remains? Or might Tartessos have declined gradually, absorbed into emerging Iberian and Mediterranean cultures, leaving only traces of its material and cultural influence? The tantalizing accounts of Tartessos also intertwine with wider Bronze Age enigmas. Could Tartessos have supplied tin, a critical component of bronze, to other Mediterranean civilizations? Was it a hub of maritime activity connecting Western Europe with distant shores, or a more isolated inland society whose rivers served as lifelines to the sea? And why do its riches and achievements occupy a space in legend almost as vividly as in historical record, straddling the boundary between documented history and myth? Some modern theories even suggest Tartessos may have been a network of communities rather than a single city, a confederation united by trade, metallurgy, and culture. Perhaps its disappearance reflects not destruction, but transformation. A society evolving into new forms, its name fading even as its influence persisted in material culture, trade networks, and the collective memory of the Mediterranean. Yet this explanation only deepens the mystery. If Tartessos survived in influence, why is its physical evidence so elusive, and why has its story become enshrouded in both history and imagination? Standing on the banks of the Guadalquivir today, one can almost hear the imagined clamor of Bronze Age life, the clang of metal, the rhythm of rowing boats, the voices of traders negotiating deals across rivers and seas. Yet, beneath the soil, in submerged settlements or eroded terraces, the full story remains hidden, waiting for discovery or interpretation. The landscape itself, shaped by time and nature, conceals as much as it reveals, offering glimpses of a civilization whose grandeur may rival the tales of myth. Tartessos challenges us to reconcile legend with archaeology, written record with material evidence, and myth with reality. Who were its people? What drove their wealth? And how did they navigate a world of rivers, metals, and distant shores? What knowledge, technology, and culture did they leave behind, even if the city itself remains undiscovered? And most provocatively, what other lost civilizations of the Bronze Age lie obscured, their stories partially told and partially submerged, awaiting the curiosity and persistence of those willing to seek them out? Tartessos endures as a symbol of both human ingenuity and historical mystery, inviting reflection on the interplay of memory, myth, and material culture, a civilization remembered for its wealth, whispered in legend, yet still hidden, challenging us to wonder what secrets of the Western Mediterranean remain buried beneath the rivers, plains, and sands of time. As the sunlight glints off the Guadalquivir River and the whispers of Tartessos fade into legend, our journey now carries us across the Mediterranean Sea to the rugged terrain of Cyprus, where the ruins of Enkomi rise from the soil like echoes of a once thriving Bronze Age metropolis. Here, in the late 2nd millennium BC, a city pulsated with life, wealth, and mystery, a hub of metallurgy, trade, and culture whose remnants tantalize archaeologists to this day. The lost city of Enkomi offers a window into a civilization that connected the Aegean, Levant, and Anatolia, yet its story is fragmented, its ultimate fate uncertain. Walking through the ancient streets of Enkomi, one can almost imagine the clatter of bronze tools in workshops, the rhythmic pounding of furnaces, and the calls of merchants exchanging goods from distant lands. Archaeological evidence reveals sprawling fortifications, carefully planned streets, and a complex network of temples, workshops, and residential areas. The city was a center of copper production, supplying ingots that may have fueled Bronze Age economies across the Mediterranean. Yet despite its sophistication, Enkomi vanished from the historical record, leaving behind ruins that raise more questions than answers. Why did a city so strategically located and economically vital disappear? And how did its networks of trade and influence dissolve so abruptly? Enkomi's wealth is apparent in its artifacts. Bronze tools and weapons, intricate jewelry, ceremonial objects, and imported pottery hint at connections to the Aegean, the Levant, and beyond. Each object suggests a culture that embraced innovation, aesthetic sophistication, and far-reaching commerce. But for all these signs of prosperity, the city's social and political organization remains enigmatic. Were these structures the work of a centralized authority, a palace elite overseeing the flow of metals and goods, or a collection of semi-independent workshops coordinated through informal networks? And how did its people navigate the challenges of warfare, natural disaster, and shifting trade alliances in a turbulent Bronze Age world? The decline of Enkomi continues to puzzle scholars. Some point to the late Bronze Age collapse, suggesting that waves of migration, invasions, or internal unrest may have undermined the city's stability. Others note evidence of destruction, possibly from fire, conflict, or earthquake. Could the city have fallen victim to the same forces that contributed to the demise of other Mediterranean centers like Mycenae or Hattusa? Or did a combination of economic disruption and environmental pressures gradually erode its prominence, leaving the inhabitants to disperse across Cyprus or beyond, carrying their skills, knowledge, and traditions with them? Trade lies at the heart of Enkomi's enigma. The city's strategic position near copper-rich regions allowed it to act as a hub, linking the western and eastern Mediterranean. Oxhide ingots, tin, and other metals passed through its docks, connecting Cyprus to Uluburun, the Levant, and the Aegean. Was Enkomi a dominant force in this network, controlling resources and setting standards, or simply one node in a broader cooperative system of exchange? And how much of this trade relied on diplomacy, trust, and unwritten rules, rather than formal treaties or armies? Even the city's cultural and religious life adds to the mystery. Temples and shrines hint at elaborate ritual practices, yet the details remain obscured by time. Did Enkomi's inhabitants worship deities of trade, fertility, or metallurgy? Were symbols carved into its walls and objects purely decorative, or did they encode knowledge, lineage, or mystical beliefs? The artifacts recovered provoke as many questions as they answer, offering tantalizing glimpses into a society both familiar in its human creativity and alien in its customs, lost to history. The disappearance of Enkomi also invites reflection on the fragility of human achievement. A city that once thrived as a center of wealth, innovation, and connection now exists largely as fragments beneath layers of soil, its streets empty, its workshops silent. How did such a sophisticated civilization vanish, leaving only objects and ruins for us to interpret? And what untold stories remain hidden beneath the surface? Treasures, records, or structures that could reveal the city's true nature and its role in the Bronze Age world? Standing amidst the ruins today, one cannot help but feel the tension between evidence and mystery. Enkomi is both real and elusive, a civilization defined by its ingenuity, its trade networks, and its material culture, yet shadowed by disappearance. Who governed these streets? What ambitions drove its people? And how did they perceive their place in a vast and interconnected Mediterranean world? And perhaps most hauntingly, what lessons about resilience, vulnerability, and human endeavor lie buried within this lost city, waiting for those patient enough to uncover them? Enkomi endures as a testament to the achievements and enigmas of the Bronze Age, a city whose prosperity and disappearance continue to fascinate, reminding us that even the most influential centers of human civilization can leave behind mysteries that defy explanation, inviting reflection, speculation, and wonder across the centuries. As the sun rises over the rolling hills and mist-laden moors of the British Isles, shadows stretch across the ancient megalithic stone circles, their silent monoliths standing as sentinels of a world long past. Weathered by millennia of wind and rain, these stones evoke both awe and mystery, commanding attention not merely as remnants of human labor, but as enigmatic markers whose purpose continues to elude definitive explanation. From the iconic rings of Stonehenge to the lesser-known circles scattered across Orkney, these monuments offer a tantalizing glimpse into the minds of Bronze Age societies who raised them. Approaching a stone circle, one is struck by its scale and precision. Massive stones, some weighing several tons, are arranged in exacting patterns, forming rings, ovals, or horseshoe shapes. How were these stones transported across difficult terrain without the aid of wheeled vehicles or draft animals? What drove communities to undertake such monumental efforts, investing vast amounts of labor into structures whose meaning remains obscure? Archaeologists have proposed ritualistic functions, celestial alignments, or social gathering spaces, yet none fully captures the complexity and mystery these circles embody. The alignment of many circles with solar and lunar events suggests a deep understanding of astronomy. At sites such as Stonehenge, the sun rises over the heel-stone during the summer solstice, a phenomenon repeated with precise consistency across centuries. Were these alignments tools for agricultural calendars, religious observances, or symbolic gestures bridging humanity and the cosmos? And if these structures encoded astronomical knowledge, how widespread was such understanding among Bronze Age communities, and what methods allowed them to track celestial movements so accurately without written records? Beyond astronomy, the stones themselves provoke questions of cultural and symbolic significance. Many megaliths bear markings, carvings, or cupels, yet their meaning remains speculative. Could they be representations of deities, ancestors, or spiritual forces? Were the circles sites of ritualized performance, offerings, or communal rites? Some scholars propose that the act of construction itself, the organization of labor, the movement of stones, and the shared effort, may have held as much significance as the final arrangement. What social or spiritual forces compelled societies to create monuments that required intergenerational effort, and why choose stones as their medium of expression? The stone's placement within the landscape adds another layer of mystery. Circles often occupy elevated sites, ridges, or areas with particular geological features. Were these chosen for visibility, sacred resonance, or practical reasons related to settlement patterns? And why do some regions feature dense clusters of stone circles, while others remain relatively bare despite similar environmental and cultural conditions? The selective placement hints at cultural knowledge, perhaps understood only by the communities who built and used them, now lost to time. Speculative theories have long swirled around these circles. Some suggest they were astronomical observatories, sites of healing, or loci of energy and spiritual power. Others argue for symbolic connections to death and the afterlife, linking stone circles to burial mounds and ritual landscapes. Could they have served multiple functions simultaneously? Practical, ceremonial, social, and symbolic, blending utility with meaning in ways that defy modern categorization? And if so, what does this reveal about the Bronze Age worldview, their perception of nature, the cosmos, and community? The mystery deepens with the absence of direct written records. Unlike civilizations of Mesopotamia or Egypt, Bronze Age societies in the British Isles left no contemporary texts explaining their construction or purpose. Archaeology provides fragments, flint tools, pottery shards, and charcoal from fires, yet these artifacts hint at life rather than fully reveal belief. How did these communities transmit knowledge, preserve ritual practices, and maintain cohesion around these monumental constructions? How much of their intent is forever obscured by the silence of prehistory? Standing among these stones today, one senses the echo of countless generations, the rhythm of labor, ritual, and observation long past. The stones endure as markers of human ambition, curiosity, and connection with forces both terrestrial and celestial. Yet their meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach, a dialogue across millennia in which we are still participants, trying to decode intent without the original language. The megalithic stone circles of the British Isles are at once familiar and alien, monuments of human skill, devotion, and imagination, yet silent witnesses to mysteries we have yet to solve. Who conceived of these structures? What compelled them to raise stones weighing tons? And what did they see reflected in the alignment of sun, moon, and earth? And perhaps most profoundly, what secrets linger among the stones, waiting for those patient enough to look, to wonder, and to imagine a Bronze Age world in which the cosmos, the land, and the human spirit were bound together in stone? As the winds sweep across the stark desert of southern Palestine, the sun casts long shadows over jagged hills and rust-colored cliffs, revealing the silent scars of the Timna copper mines, a landscape that whispers of human ingenuity, ambition, and mystery. Here, in the heart of the Arava Valley, ancient miners once carved tunnels into the rock, extracting one of the most vital resources of the Bronze Age, copper. For millennia, these mines supplied the raw material that fueled the creation of tools, weapons, and monumental works across the Mediterranean world. Yet, for all their importance, much about the people, methods, and full extent of these operations remains unresolved. Walking among the mine shafts and remnants of smelting furnaces, one can almost hear the echoes of hammers striking rock, the crackle of fire, and the murmur of workers coordinating in darkness. Archaeological evidence reveals a sophisticated understanding of ore extraction, fire control, and metallurgical processes. Copper from Timna traveled far beyond these desert valleys, perhaps reaching the Aegean, Egypt, and even the distant trade networks of Tartessos. But how did isolated communities in such a harsh environment achieve such a feat? What knowledge, skill, and organizational structure allowed them to extract and process metal at a scale that rivaled the great centers of the Bronze Age? The mines themselves are a testament to human determination. Vertical shafts descend tens of meters into the sandstone, with horizontal tunnels radiating outward like veins of ambition. Traces of early pick marks and fire-setting techniques suggest labor-intensive methods, refined over generations. Could these miners have had formal training or specialized knowledge passed down through apprenticeships, or did this expertise emerge organically from trial, error, and observation? And how did they survive in such a harsh climate, relying on limited water sources, scarce vegetation, and extreme temperatures while undertaking physically demanding work? Copper, in the Bronze Age, was more than a material. It was power. Timna's output may have underpinned not only local economies, but also regional geopolitics. Access to copper could elevate communities to prominence, attract trade, and facilitate cultural exchange. Did control over these mines spark competition or conflict? Were the miners themselves free laborers, conscripted workers, or part of a hierarchically organized workforce under the command of distant rulers or city-states? These questions linger because, despite extensive excavation, little direct evidence of the societal structure has been found. artifacts from the site deepen the mystery. Small tools, slag, and fragments of ceremonial objects hint at a society where technology, ritual, and daily life intersected. Temples and shrines near the mines suggest religious or symbolic dimensions to copper extraction. Were these practices purely practical, designed to ensure success in a dangerous and unpredictable endeavor? Or did they reflect a broader cosmology linking metal, earth, and the divine? Some suggest that celestial observations may have guided mining and smelting activities, connecting Timna's work with the wider Bronze Age fascination with the heavens. The question of chronology further complicates the story. Mining activity at Timna spans centuries, with peaks and declines that may correlate with regional events, trade disruptions, migrations, or environmental changes. Could shifts in climate have driven expansions and abandonments? Did periods of high demand in distant regions dictate the intensity of work here, linking this remote desert to the pulse of the Mediterranean world? And how much remains undiscovered beneath layers of sand and rubble hidden by time and erosion? Speculative theories have long intrigued researchers. Some propose that Timna was not merely a production site, but a ceremonial landscape, blending metallurgy with spiritual practice. Others suggest that early copper mining here may have influenced political power structures across the region, positioning Timna as a silent yet central player in Bronze Age geopolitics. And if these connections existed, why do contemporary records from neighboring civilizations rarely mention the source of this vital metal? Could much of Timna's story have been deliberately overlooked or lost in the sands of history? Standing today at the edge of the desert plateau, one can gaze across the mines and imagine the rhythm of life here. The sweat of miners, the glow of furnaces, the steady procession of copper ingots destined for distant lands. Yet beneath these ruins lies a deeper enigma. Who were these miners? What knowledge guided their hands? And how did their labor shape the wider world while leaving so few traces of the society itself? The copper mines of Timna endure as a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and mystery, a landscape where the demands of survival, technology, and trade intersect, yet where the full story remains buried beneath rock, sand, and time. As we ponder their significance, we are left to wonder what other secrets of the Bronze Age desert remain hidden, waiting for the courage and curiosity to uncover them. As the Aegean sun dips toward the horizon, its golden light dances across the rugged cliffs of Santorini, illuminating the ruins of Akrotiri, a city frozen in time beneath layers of volcanic ash. Walking among the narrow streets and carefully preserved buildings, one is struck by the extraordinary detail of Bronze Age life. Multi-story homes, vibrant frescoes depicting dolphins, saffron fields, and ceremonial processions, and sophisticated drainage systems that reveal a community of remarkable ingenuity. Yet, for all its sophistication, Akrotiri was abandoned abruptly, leaving behind no written record to explain why, no bodies in the streets, only the silent whispers of an evacuated city. Archaeological evidence tells us much about daily life here. Workshops reveal skilled artisans producing pottery, jewelry, and tools. Storerooms suggest trade networks reaching across the Aegean and possibly to the eastern Mediterranean, bringing in raw materials and exchanging goods. The city was a hub of commerce and culture, yet its desertion hints at forces both powerful and unseen. What prompted the inhabitants to leave a flourishing city behind, seemingly in a hurry, taking only what they could carry and leaving so much behind? The eruption of the nearby Thera volcano, dated to the mid-2nd millennium BC, is often cited as a catalyst for abandonment. Ash layers cover the city, preserving frescoes and architecture with almost photographic clarity. Yet the timing and impact of the eruption remain debated. Was it the immediate cause of evacuation, or merely a contributing factor in a sequence of events that led to the city's desertion? Could other natural phenomena, such as earthquakes, tsunamis, or climatic shifts, have compounded the crisis, making continued habitation impossible? Akrotiri's abandonment raises deeper questions about human behavior under stress. The lack of human remains suggests organized evacuation rather than sudden catastrophe. Who coordinated such a departure? How did the residents navigate the uncertainty of the unknown, leaving behind homes, storerooms, and artworks? What can this tell us about their social structure, their priorities, and the values they placed on life, community, and survival? And if the eruption was a warning, why did no subsequent settlement flourish in its immediate vicinity for centuries? The city's architectural sophistication adds another layer of intrigue. Multi-story buildings with wooden supports, plastered walls, and elaborate frescoes reflect a society that valued both function and aesthetics. The presence of extensive drainage systems, paved streets, and public spaces indicates planning and communal governance. Yet such an advanced society vanished without trace. Did political upheaval, economic collapse, or external threats hasten the abandonment? Could contact with the Sea Peoples, pirates, or rival city-states have played a role? Or were the forces leading to desertion entirely internal, born of social tension or environmental strain? Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that a combination of volcanic ash fallout, earthquakes, and subsequent food shortages forced the population to seek refuge elsewhere. Others propose that Akrotiri's desertion was part of broader regional upheavals that included the decline of other Bronze Age civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean. Could the city have been deliberately abandoned as a precaution, its residents anticipating larger disasters? Or does the lack of clear evidence point to a more mysterious, unknown catalyst? Frescoes and artifacts preserved in the ash add to the puzzle. Vibrant murals depict not only daily life but also ritual and symbolic practices. Temples and shrines indicate religious devotion, yet no record survives to reveal how faith or prophecy may have influenced decisions during this critical period. Did spiritual belief guide the evacuation, or were practical concerns paramount? And what knowledge, stories, or warnings were passed along by those who left, now lost to time? Standing today on the cliff overlooking the sunken caldera, one senses both the brilliance and fragility of Akrotiri. It was a city of vision, commerce, and culture, yet it vanished from history with only silence as its record. The abandoned streets and preserved frescoes invite reflection on human resilience, adaptability, and the unforeseen forces that shape our lives. The unexplained abandonment of Akrotiri remains a haunting enigma, a thriving Bronze Age city frozen under ash, its people gone, its fate unresolved. What truly compelled its residents to leave so suddenly and so completely? And beneath the ash and dust, are there still secrets of Akrotiri waiting to be uncovered, revealing lessons not only about the past, but about human response to the unknown? Rising from the windswept steppes of the southern Ural Mountains, the circular fortifications of Arkaim emerge from the earth like a ghostly memory of a world long vanished. From above, its concentric walls and carefully planned streets hint at a level of urban sophistication that seems almost impossible for a civilization dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. Archaeologists have marveled at the precision of its layout. Homes arranged around communal spaces, fortified gates aligned with astronomical markers, and streets that suggest both functionality and symbolic intent. Yet, for all its clarity and craftsmanship, Arkaim remains enigmatic, a civilization that appeared, thrived briefly, and disappeared, leaving only questions in its wake. Excavations reveal a community deeply connected to the cycles of nature. The dwellings, built of timber and clay, contained hearths and storage pits, indicating domestic life with a surprising degree of organization. Metallurgical artifacts and evidence of bronze working suggest an economy capable of supporting specialized craft, trade, and possibly regional influence. And yet, despite its achievements, Arkaim was abandoned, its fortifications left empty, its streets silent. What forces drove its inhabitants from a city designed with such foresight and care? Was it environmental catastrophe, social upheaval, or some other, less tangible pressure? One of the most compelling aspects of Arkaim is its astronomical alignment. The fortifications correspond with solstices and celestial patterns, hinting at a society that observed and interpreted the skies with careful attention. Could this reflect ritual practice, agricultural planning, or a symbolic cosmology? If so, what might the sudden disappearance of such a knowledge-driven society say about the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations? How did their understanding of the heavens intersect with the practical necessities of survival, trade, and governance? The reasons for Arkaim's abandonment remain speculative. Some scholars suggest climate change, shifting rainfall patterns, soil depletion, or drought may have rendered the region increasingly inhospitable. Others propose social or political turmoil, conflicts with neighboring communities or internal divisions that eroded cohesion. And yet, the settlement shows no signs of violent destruction, no mass graves, no evidence of siege. The inhabitants appear to have left deliberately, perhaps gradually, taking what they could carry and leaving the city to the winds of the steppe. What drove such a calculated departure, and where did these people go? Arkaim also challenges conventional understanding of the Bronze Age steppe. Its circular layout, sophisticated metallurgy, and apparent knowledge of astronomy suggest a society more complex than its isolated location might imply. Did Arkaim operate as part of a broader network of settlements, sharing knowledge and goods across vast distances? Or was it an isolated experiment in urban planning and ritual life, destined to vanish quietly from history? The absence of written records leaves us dependent on material culture, forcing us to interpret the motives, beliefs, and ambitions of a people who spoke only through stone, clay, and bronze. Speculative theories about Arkaim extend beyond conventional archaeology. Some suggest that it served as a center of spiritual or ceremonial significance, a place where celestial events were celebrated or interpreted as divine messages. Others propose that it may have been a hub for early Indo-Iranian peoples, linking linguistic and cultural patterns across the steppes. Could Arkaim represent a kind of lost knowledge, a glimpse into a worldview in which science, ritual, and daily life were inseparable? And if so, how much of that knowledge vanished when the city was abandoned, leaving only earthworks and artifacts to hint at its existence? Walking among the low mounds and reconstructed walls today, one feels the resonance of human ingenuity, ambition, and mystery. The meticulous design of Arkaim, its harmonious blending of practical living with celestial awareness, and its sudden disappearance confronts us with a paradox. A society capable of profound insight, yet vulnerable to forces beyond its control. What lessons lie hidden in the empty homes, the echo of footsteps long gone, the alignment of walls with the stars? The lost civilization of Arkaim remains a haunting enigma. Its people engineered a city with foresight, knowledge, and artistry, only to abandon it to the elements. How could such a thriving community vanish so completely, leaving behind only whispers in the earth and artifacts to puzzle future generations? And in the silent ruins of Arkaim, are there still truths buried beneath the soil, insights into Bronze Age life, cosmology, and human resilience that remain waiting for discovery? Rising from the rugged landscapes of central Sardinia, among rolling hills and windswept plains, stand the enigmatic bronze statuettes known as the Dancing Warriors. These small, meticulously crafted figures, often no more than a few inches tall, capture a sense of movement so vivid that the ancient Bronze Age artisans who created them seem to have frozen a dance in time. Each warrior is adorned with armor, helmets, and sometimes weapons, yet their poses are not of battle. They are dynamic, almost celebratory, limbs suspended mid-motion as if caught in a rhythm lost to history. They are silent, yet strangely expressive, and they compel us to wonder, who were these warriors, and what story were they meant to tell? Archaeological records place these statuettes in the context of the Nuragic civilization, flourishing in Sardinia from roughly 1800 to 900 BC. Their discovery in tombs and ritual sites suggests they held symbolic or ceremonial significance, perhaps offering protection in the afterlife or representing legendary ancestors. But beyond these practical interpretations lies an enduring mystery. Why this particular depiction of movement and energy? Why choose to render warriors dancing rather than fighting, celebrating rather than mourning? Was this a ritual dance of war, a ceremonial procession, or a symbolic act meant to convey cosmic or spiritual truths? The craftsmanship of the figures is striking. Cast in bronze with careful attention to detail, the statuettes display not only martial attire, but also a remarkable understanding of balance, proportion, and human kinetics. Every tilt of a head, bend of a knee, or extension of an arm conveys a sense of rhythm and vitality that seems almost modern in its naturalism. Could such artistry reflect a deeper cultural philosophy, one that linked martial prowess with ceremonial expression? Or might these dancing warriors be part of a visual language, a story preserved in metal whose meaning has been lost over millennia? The context of their discovery adds to the enigma. Many of the statuettes were found in burial sites, accompanied by grave goods, suggesting they played a role in funerary rituals. Some scholars propose they were intended to guide or protect the deceased in the afterlife, while others suggest they may have served as offerings to deities. But no written records survive to confirm their purpose. Without the voices of their creators, the dancing warriors remain enigmatic intermediaries between our world and theirs, a glimpse into a society that valued not only strength and combat, but also ceremony, rhythm, and perhaps joy. Speculative interpretations abound. Some researchers suggest that these figures were linked to ritual dances of initiation or seasonal festivals, marking transitions in life or time. Others see in them a reflection of mythic narratives or heroic tales, immortalizing legendary figures in miniature bronze. There are even more fringe ideas. Could these statuettes represent a lost knowledge of choreographed movement, a Bronze Age form of symbolic storytelling encoded in posture and motion? Or might they have served as teaching tools, guiding warriors in ceremonial drills or embodying societal ideals of balance, agility, and coordination? The mystery deepens when considering the broader Nuragic context. The Sardinian Bronze Age was marked by the construction of massive stone towers, or nurags, whose purpose remains partly obscure. Could the dancing warriors be connected to these monumental structures, serving as ritual participants in ceremonies held within or around these towers? Were they emblems of civic or religious identity, capturing a harmony between the people and the landscapes they inhabited? And if so, why did this culture, capable of such artistic and architectural achievement, leave no written account to preserve its traditions? Handling the figures today, one is struck by their vitality. The bronze is cool, the lines precise, yet the energy of movement seems almost palpable. It is as if the statuettes themselves beckon us to imagine the music, the chants, the fires around which these dances once occurred. What rhythms did these Bronze Age people hear? What meanings did they attach to movement and form? And most importantly, What stories did they hope to carry forward through these silent, metallic witnesses? The Bronze Age. Dancing warriors of Sardinia remain a haunting puzzle, their purpose and symbolism elusive. They stand at the intersection of artistry, ritual, and human expression, embodying a culture both sophisticated and mysterious. As we contemplate their frozen movements, we are reminded that history is not always written in stone or text. Sometimes it is preserved in fleeting gestures, in dance captured in bronze. And in their silent choreography, we are left with a profound question. What truths about life, belief, and creativity have been lost, and how much of the neuralgic world still waits to be understood beneath Sardinia's sun-baked hills? Rising from the sun-soaked hills and fertile plains of ancient Cyprus, a collection of enigmatic figurines has puzzled archaeologists and historians for decades. These small, often delicately crafted objects, fashioned from clay, stone, and occasionally bronze, depict human and animal forms in ways that defy easy categorization. Some are stylized and abstract, with elongated limbs or exaggerated features. Others appear almost lifelike, capturing expressions and gestures that suggest intention, emotion, or ritual significance. Their discovery in burial sites, sanctuaries, and domestic spaces hints at a society deeply invested in symbolism and spiritual practice. But the true purpose of these figurines remains obscured by the passage of time. Cyprus during the Bronze Age, from roughly 2500 to 1050 BC, was a hub of trade, culture, and technological development. The island's position in the eastern Mediterranean connected it to the Aegean, Anatolia, and the Levant, exposing its inhabitants to diverse influences. Yet, the figurines themselves retain a distinct Cypriot character, marked by unique forms, motifs, and craftsmanship. Some portray women holding infants or flanked by animals, evoking domestic or fertility themes. Others depict warriors or figures in motion, suggesting ritual dances or ceremonial processions. What societal or spiritual functions did these figures serve? Were they talismans, teaching tools, representations of deities, or something even more elusive? The settings in which these figurines are found add layers of mystery. In necropolises, they seem intended to accompany the deceased, perhaps offering protection or guidance in the afterlife. In temples or ritual spaces, they may have been used in offerings, prayers, or symbolic enactments of myth. Yet no inscriptions survive to confirm their significance, leaving researchers to interpret intent through form and context. Why did these ancient Cypriots invest such careful attention in creating objects whose meanings now elude us? And what can the diversity of style tell us about their worldview, beliefs, and social structures? Some figurines are particularly striking in their abstraction. Limbs are extended or contorted, facial features are minimal or absent, proportions are deliberately distorted. These choices suggest a symbolic or conceptual purpose rather than a purely decorative one. Could such forms encode spiritual ideas, astronomical knowledge, or societal hierarchies? Do they represent archetypes, mythic beings, or a kind of proto-writing, a visual language intended to convey complex cultural concepts? The ambiguity challenges modern assumptions about Bronze Age societies. Here is evidence of sophistication, yet it resists straightforward explanation. Comparative analysis offers some clues, yet raises further questions. Similar figurines appear across the Mediterranean and Near East, yet Cypriot examples maintain distinct traits, particularly in posture, ornamentation, and context. Some researchers argue that these figures may reflect shared ritual practices, perhaps linked to trade networks or cultural exchange. Others suggest a unique Cypriot cosmology, a worldview in which human, animal, and divine forms intersected in symbolic performance. What beliefs and experiences were these figurines meant to capture, and how widely were those ideas shared across the Bronze Age world? Speculation about their role is as varied as the figurines themselves. Certain figures may have served as educational models, illustrating social roles, ceremonial actions, or moral lessons. Others could have been personal objects, charms imbued with protective or magical qualities. Some suggest that their deliberate abstraction was a method of encoding information accessible only to initiates or priests, a secret knowledge hidden in plain sight. How much of that knowledge has been irretrievably lost, buried alongside the people who created and revered these objects? Handling these figurines today, one cannot help but sense the humanity imbued in each curve and contour. Though silent, they communicate a presence, a bridge across millennia to the people who made them, the lives they lived, and the beliefs that shaped them. They compel us to imagine ceremonies, domestic life, and sacred observances, to wonder about the rhythms, stories, and experiences that gave rise to these forms. The strange figurines of Bronze Age Cyprus remain a profound enigma. They are at once familiar and alien, reflecting human concerns we recognize, yet expressing them in ways that escape our understanding. As we study their lines, shapes, and placements, we are reminded that history is not solely written in texts or monumental architecture. Sometimes it survives in the smallest of objects, in gestures frozen in clay and bronze, whispering of a world we can only partially reconstruct. And in that whisper lies a question that endures. What truths about the people of ancient Cyprus, their beliefs, their rituals, and their imagination, still remain hidden, waiting for discovery beneath the island's enduring sun? Nestled within the silent tombs of Dendra in the rugged plains of the Argolid, a discovery was made that would forever challenge our understanding of Bronze Age warfare and craftsmanship. Buried for more than 3 millennia, the Dendra Panoply, a complete set of bronze armor, lay in solemn repose, its copper plates and riveted segments whispering of a time when the line between myth and reality blurred on the battlefield. Unlike any other surviving armor from the late Bronze Age, this ensemble envelops the body in segmented protection, a full cuirass complemented by shoulder guards, greaves, and a helmet. The craftsmanship is meticulous, the plates interlocking in a manner both rigid and flexible, as though designed to grant the wearer both invulnerability and movement. Dated to approximately 1400 to 1200 BC, the panoply emerges from a period when Mycenaean civilization flourished, yet the details of its use and origin remain mysterious. How widespread was such armor? Was it reserved for elite warriors, kings, or ceremonial functionaries? And how did the knowledge and skill required to create this full-body defense emerge in a world otherwise dominated by simpler bronze weapons and leather protection? Scholars have marveled at its sophistication, noting that the techniques required to shape, rivet, and articulate such large bronze segments suggest an advanced understanding of metallurgy and design that seems almost anomalous for the era. The setting of its discovery adds to the enigma. Found in a burial mound rather than a battlefield, the panoply was interred alongside grave goods that imply high status, finely crafted pottery, weapons, and ornaments. Could this have been ceremonial armor, intended to signify authority in both life and death? Or did it once see combat, forged for warriors whose names and deeds are now lost to time? Its sheer completeness hints at a story untold, a glimpse into a martial culture that valued both protection and pageantry, yet left almost no textual record behind. The armor itself is enigmatic in function as much as form. The segmented plates overlap in ways that could deflect blows, yet their construction raises questions about practicality. Could a warrior truly fight effectively while encased in this bronze shell? Experimental reconstructions suggest that while cumbersome, it might have allowed a surprising degree of mobility, though perhaps more suited to ceremonial processions or duels than to the chaos of open warfare. And yet, the precision and uniformity of the panoply imply that it was designed for a purpose, not merely as symbolic display. Who conceived such a design, and what inspired its complex articulation? Comparisons with other Bronze Age armor are instructive yet puzzling. Across the Eastern Mediterranean, contemporary cultures employed simpler protection: bronze or leather chest plates, greaves, and helmets, but nothing approaching the completeness of the Dendra set. Some suggest that the panoply may have been an isolated experiment, a peak of metallurgical innovation whose techniques were lost in the upheavals of the late Bronze Age collapse. Could knowledge of such armor have existed more broadly, circulating among Mycenaean elites or neighboring cultures, only to vanish when trade routes faltered and kingdoms fell? The panoply also raises questions about social and military structures. Its sheer expense and labor-intensive production suggest it belonged to someone of immense power, a warrior whose authority demanded both protection and display. Was the Dendra panoply a singular masterpiece, or one of many that have perished, their metal recycled, their stories forgotten? And what does its existence tell us about the nature of Bronze Age combat, the rituals of war, and the relationship between martial skill and ceremonial pageantry? Even more perplexing is the symbolic resonance of the armor. To the modern eye, it conveys an almost mythic aura, reminiscent of heroes depicted in epic tales like the Iliad, where gods and men clash in gleaming bronze. Could this be evidence that reality and legend were intertwined in Bronze Age society, that the figures enshrined in epic poetry were inspired by real warriors clad in armor not unlike the Dendra panoply? Or is it an extraordinary exception, a relic of an individual's ambition, creativity, or ceremonial necessity? Handling or even viewing the panoply today, one cannot escape a sense of awe. It speaks to a civilization capable of remarkable ingenuity, yet veiled in mystery. Its rivets, curves, and plates are more than metal. They are a dialogue across centuries, inviting us to imagine the lives, battles, and ceremonies that brought it into being. It embodies both human ingenuity and the unknowable aspects of history, where skill and intent survive in artifacts, yet the people who created them remain shadowed in the mists of time. The Dendra panoply remains a testament to the ingenuity of Bronze Age craftsmen and the mysteries that shroud their world. It challenges assumptions about technological capability, martial culture, and the ceremonial display of power, and, in its silent bronze embrace, it leaves us with a question as enduring as the metal itself. What other secrets of war, craft, and human ambition from the late Bronze Age are still waiting, buried beneath earth and time, to reveal themselves to the curious eye?